Chapter 353. Marriage Alliance. With whom? Elder Zhongyi was dazed, but he suddenly understood when he saw Situ Xingqian's expression. With you. Situ Xingqian nodded lightly. Father has the same intention. Elder Zhongyi was shocked. Country Yao Chen and country Xing Luo didn't have much interaction before. So why are they suddenly marrying each other? They even have designs on Situ Xingqian. What exactly is your father thinking? Rong Jin isn't outstanding in any way. And from what you said just now, he's narrow-minded and won't amount to anything. He's not worthy of you at all. Even if it's not Rong Xiu, it should be another young talent. How can it be Rong Jin? Situ Xingqian didn't seem to care as she smiled. He's country Yao Chen's crown prince after all. And he's not completely useless to be able to come this far. You might have underestimated him. Besides, even though this matter hasn't happened yet, Father is very insistent, so he must have his reasons. What do you think? Anyway, I don't think this marriage alliance will work. Elder Zhongyi sneered. If it really happens, won't you have to stay in country Yao Chen in the future? Since Rong Jin has done so many ridiculous things, it means that he can't take on big responsibilities. Even though he's still the crown prince, he can't stay in this position for long. Xingqian, don't worry. When that kid comes tomorrow, I'll definitely stop this marriage. With me around, your father won't dare to force you. Situ Xingqian's eyes sparkled. Elder Zhongyi, I know that you're doing this for my own good. But I've said so much to you today because I hope that you'll agree to this marriage tomorrow. What? You really want to marry Rong Jin? Elder Zhongyi looked at Situ Xingqian in disbelief. Why you can't purposely marry Rong Xiu? Because he wants to marry someone else, right? Situ Xingqian chuckled. You're thinking too much. Why would I do such a thing? I really agreed to this marriage. You also know that not many people know about this before. If I suddenly say it out loud, many people will definitely object to it. But if you can express your agreement tomorrow, then the others won't say anything. Elder Zhongyi had an extremely high status in country Xing Luo. As long as he spoke, this matter would definitely go smoothly. Xingqian, have you really thought this through? Yes. Elder Zhongyi looked at Situ Xingqian's determined expression and couldn't help but sigh. All right. Since that's the case, I'll agree to it. Situ Xingqian's smile deepened. Many thanks, Elder Zhongyi. Country Yao Chen Imperial Palace. It was already late at night, but the Empress and Rong Jin were still discussing something in the room. You're going to Xing Luo tomorrow. This marriage must succeed. The Empress looked very serious. This is your best chance. If you miss it, who knows how long you'll have to wait. Rong Jin nodded. I know. Don't worry. I've already contacted Situ Xingqian. There won't be any problems with this. The Empress relaxed a little and leaned back in her chair with a satisfied smile on her face. That's good. I asked you to think of a way to improve your relationship with her. I didn't expect it to go so smoothly. Rong Jin also laughed and looked rather smug. Everyone says that Situ Xingqian is the brightest pearl in Xing Luo. Ever since she became of marriageable age, countless people have proposed to her. But she didn't agree. I originally thought that she would be hard to get close to. But I didn't expect her to. Perhaps she was interested in you before. The Empress sized Rong Jin up and smiled. To a woman, love is the most unpredictable thing. Everyone said that Situ Xingqian had high standards, but when she met someone like Rong Jin, it was easy for her to fall in love with him. Rong Jin originally didn't have any special feelings for Situ Xingqian, but when such an outstanding beauty liked him in all aspects, his ego was greatly satisfied. It was precisely because of this that his attitude toward this marriage changed drastically. Previously, he was a little unwilling, but now that he thought about how he could see Situ Xingqian tomorrow and settle the marriage, he had an inexplicable sense of anticipation. Anyway, you did a good job in this matter. When you arrive, try to settle this matter as soon as possible. As long as you settle the marriage, your position as the crown prince will be stable. The Empress sighed. This way, even if your father finds out about Zhen Zhen, we'll have a trump card. Rong Jin asked worriedly, Haven't you found her? Haven't you found her? There's no news at all. It's as if she completely disappeared from the face of the earth. If it weren't for the lack of movement in the palace, she would have thought that Rongzhen was dead. However, she clearly wasn't. Someone secretly hid Rongzhen somewhere, and they couldn't find her after searching for so long. The Empress didn't know how she spent the past few days in fear. The last time, Emperor Jiawen mentioned that he wanted to visit Rongzhen, but he suddenly received a letter from Xing Luo, so he was delayed. Later on, she guessed that the contents of the letter were related to the marriage alliance. This was because Emperor Jiawen removed Rongzhen's house arrest not long after, and his attitude toward Rongjin improved significantly. "You're leaving tomorrow. Because of this, your father even specially asked Jinjin to send you off, but I stopped him. Your father is busy with you and Situ Xingqian, so he can't care about Jinjin for now. However, he already has suspicions, and this matter can't be hidden for long. As long as you can settle the marriage alliance as soon as possible, your father will weigh the pros and cons and definitely won't do anything to us." Rongjin nodded. "I understand." Princely Mansion. Rongxiu sat in the study room and was writing something. Yanqing and Yuemo waited at the side. The octagonal glazed lamp's light shone on Rongxiu's jade-like face. He looked down, and his long eyelashes cast a faint shadow under his eyes. It was like a wisp of smoke floating across the bright moonlight, cold and noble. After some time he finally stopped writing. Yanqing and Yuemo were both energized as they looked up. Rongxiu picked up the thing he wrote, and read it again, before placing it on a clear, square jade stone in front of him. The moment the two came into contact, the square jade stone suddenly emitted a faint phosphorescent light. It turned out that the square jade stone was sunken in, and there was an extremely shallow pool of water inside. That thing melted when it touched the water, and it turned into rays of light on the water surface. After a while, the light disappeared, and the water surface returned to normal. It also gradually seeped into the jade stone and disappeared. At first glance, it seemed to be an extremely normal jade stone, and there was nothing special about it. Rongxiu pushed that thing forward and lightly said, "Send it back." "Send this back." Yanqing stepped forward and carefully picked that thing up. But at this point, he saw a golden light suddenly appear on Rongxiu's long and white fingertips. He said in shock, "Master, you're in charge." Master. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 354. Rongxiu glanced at his fingertips, his gaze cold. In the next moment, that cluster of golden light instantly dissipated. The entire process was extremely fast. If not for Yanqing and Yuemo standing nearby, they would have thought that what they saw just now was just an illusion. Rongxiu leaned back in his chair, one hand supporting his forehead. There was a faint trace of fatigue between his eyebrows. "You may leave." After the initial shock, Yanqing's expression became very serious. "Master, in your current state, I'm afraid that you have to make a trip back as soon as possible." He had only left for a few days to retrieve this item, but his master had already developed to this point. Thinking about it carefully, ever since he started interacting with Chu Luyue, his master had never returned. Rongxiu closed his eyes and didn't say anything, but his meaning was very clear. "Master." Yanqing wanted to persuade him again, but Yuemo couldn't help but cough, desperately signaling to Yanqing with his eyes. Yanqing looked back. Seeing him like this, he hesitated for a moment before respectfully retreating. "Master, don't worry. I'll do it right away." With that, he left with the strange jade. Yuemo hurriedly said, "It's already very late. Master, you should rest. I'll also take my leave first." Rongxiu waved his hand. Yuemo hurriedly followed Yanqing out. As soon as Yuemo walked out, he saw Yanqing waiting for him outside. The two of them exchanged glances and didn't say anything. They just left together. The two of them walked side by side for quite a distance. When they were far away from Rongxiu's study, Yanqing finally spoke with a cold face. "Today's situation is definitely not the first time. Did you know about it before?" Yuemo could only nod with a bitter face. "A similar situation happened a few days ago. Then why didn't you persuade him? Don't you know how serious this matter is? If I didn't see it today, when would you have told me?" Yanqing was usually very calm and indifferent. She rarely had any mood swings, let alone get angry. His reaction at this moment showed how big of an impact this matter had on him. Umo shivered unconsciously, feeling inexplicably guilty. I did try to persuade him. But look at Master, do you think I can persuade him? Yanqing's face was still cold. Then you should have told me earlier. What's the use of telling you? Umo fiercely rubbed his face. Do you think that Master will listen to what you say? Yanqing fell silent. They had followed Master for many years, and understood Master's character the best. Since he refused to go back now, it was useless for anyone to say anything. It seems that the forceful summoning by Master had a huge impact. Yanqing murmured. If it wasn't for that incident, Master would have been able to hold on for a long time. But now, didn't Master ask you to retrieve this item because he's determined not to go back for a while? Umo patted his shoulder. Don't worry too much. Master knows what he's doing. Yanqing kept quiet for a while before asking. Did Master say when he's planning to go back? Umo looked troubled. It seems like he's planning to wait until Mu Qinghe leaves. I don't know what's wrong with this Mu Qinghe recently. He's been staying in the Imperial City, doing nothing, and refusing to leave. No one knew what else he wanted to do, but no one dared to ask. Even Emperor Jiawen didn't dare to disturb him for no reason, let alone others. I think you should send this item back first. Don't delay the important matters. If anything happens to Master, I'm here. Don't worry. I'll inform you immediately if anything happens. Yanqing finally gave up after Umo repeatedly assured him, and left with the jade. Umo looked at his departing back view, and a tinge of guilt appeared in his eyes. If Yanqing knew that Master's situation was worse than what he saw today, how would he feel? Now I can only hope that Mu Qinghe leaves as soon as possible. And that person, hurry back. In the library, Chu Luyue looked at the empty fifth floor in front of her and knitted her brows. There's actually nothing here. Not to mention books, there's not even a bookshelf here. At a glance, the four white walls were empty. Chu Luyue found it increasingly strange. That's not right. In any academy, there was no way that a place like the library pavilion would leave an entire floor devoid of content. She didn't give up as she walked forward and started to carefully check everything here. But no matter how hard she searched, she didn't find anything. She even knocked on the four walls, but it was still the same. After searching one round, she finally stopped. She held her chin with one hand and fell into deep thought. Previously, when she was preparing to leave on the fourth floor, she did feel 3 waves. Although each of the 3 waves was smaller than the previous one, there was no doubt that they were there. Then where did they come from? Chu Luyue originally thought that even if there weren't as many books here as there were on the other floors, there should be something special. But she didn't expect that there was nothing here. Or perhaps, she just hadn't found it yet. Chu Luyue thought for a long time, but still couldn't find an answer. She simply sat on the ground and crossed her legs. Anyway, there was still 1 day left. She could wait here and see if the waves would appear again. Time slowly passed, but Chu Luyue didn't see any signs of movement. Bored to death, she decided to silently recite the Jingshan finger again. Because when she came in, both parties had already agreed that she could borrow any book in the library, but every book had to be returned to its original position after reading it. Moreover, the books on each floor were not allowed to be taken to other floors. Therefore, Chu Luyue could only rely on her own memory to recite the Jingshan finger. She held her breath and focused. In her mind, the Jingshan finger appeared clearly. Chu Luyue started to recall the first move and tried to cultivate it. The force in her body surged towards her dantian. When it condensed into a ball, she controlled a strand of force and poured it into her right index finger. But before that strand of force reached her right index finger, it had already dissipated into the Yuan meridian. Chu Luyue readjusted, mobilized an even smaller amount of force and tried again. It was still a failure. But Chu Luyue wasn't discouraged. She continued to try again and again. The first step now was to control the force so that it could flow along the Yuan meridian from her dantian all the way to her right index finger. Just this point alone was very difficult, because this required the cultivator to have a sufficiently strong Yuan meridian. It also required the cultivator to have exquisite control over the force. Chu Luiyue only wanted to try it first, but the more she tried, the more she realized that it was more difficult than she had imagined. Her competitive spirit was aroused. She actually tried it over 1,000 times. When the sun shone on the next morning, Chu Luiyue's right index finger was finally covered in a layer of faint silver. Before she could exclaim in surprise, she suddenly felt that her surroundings were bright. She subconsciously squinted her eyes and looked around. Then her eyes suddenly widened. Countless silver characters appeared on the walls around her. They were shining brightly. Digression. I'm sorry, I can't stand it anymore. Tomorrow I'll land at 6. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 355. Chu Luiyue looked at the scene in front of her in shock. The 5th floor was indeed not empty. To think that such a shocking secret was hidden in all directions. Chu Luiyue subconsciously wanted to walk forward. Suddenly, countless rays of light flew from all directions and gradually condensed in front of her. In a moment, 3 large silver words appeared in the air in front of her. Awakening God Technique. The 3 words were like flowing water, swaying gently and shining brilliantly, but with an unparalleled pressure. Chu Luiyue was shocked. This aura was very similar to Awakening God Finger, but it was several times stronger than Awakening God Finger. And this pressure was even more vast and boundless. Chu Luiyue's heart was beating wildly, as if it was being pulled by some mysterious force. She slowly stretched out her finger and gently tapped on the 3 large words. It was like a stone being thrown into a calm lake. The void in front of her suddenly rippled, with the 3 words as the center, spreading out in all directions. The ripples spread to the surrounding walls. Buzz! The subtle ripples came again. Chu Luiyue looked over. The words that appeared on the surrounding walls seemed to be affected as well. Like the stars in the dark night, they flickered and disappeared. Her heart suddenly trembled. This ripple was exactly the same as the one she felt on the 4th floor. In the next moment, Chu Luiyue suddenly felt an inexplicable feeling coming from her fingertips, all the way to the bottom of her heart. In an instant, she seemed to have an indescribable sense of connection with the entire space. She seemed to have sensed something, looked up to the left, and carefully identified the words on the wall. Soon, she realized that the content on the wall was exactly the same as the Awakening God Finger she saw earlier. She immediately looked at the second wall beside her. Sure enough, the content on the wall was the same as the Awakening God Finger. But as she looked at it, Chu Luiyue realized that something was not right. The thing on the second wall had actually transformed the Awakening God Finger into a palm technique, and its power had also become stronger. Chu Luiyue closed his eyes and looked at it seriously again. He could basically confirm that the level of this palm technique was at the middle stage of the Earth stage. An absurd and bold idea suddenly appeared in Chu Luiyue's mind. She couldn't wait to look at the 3rd wall. At this point, he changed from a palm technique to a fist technique. More importantly, once this fist art was mastered, it was very likely that it would reach the upper level of the Earth rank. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and tried his best to suppress his wildly beating heart as he looked at the last wall. Just like the 3 walls in front of him, there was also some glowing writing on it. However, after staring at it for a while, Chu Luiyue realized that he couldn't understand what it was. None of the words could be read smoothly, and it looked very chaotic. Chu Luiyue looked at it for a long time, but still couldn't figure it out. However, this only made her even more excited. It was rumored that heaven-rank martial skills were different from ordinary martial skills that were recorded with pen and ink. The heaven-rank martial skills in this world were all obtained by powerful people who comprehended the heavenly Tao. If one wanted to cultivate a heaven-rank martial skill, they couldn't use their eyes to see it. Instead, they had to use their force to sense it. If a cultivator's realm wasn't enough, they wouldn't be able to touch it or even understand it. Just like this moment, Chu Luiyue had seen a heaven-rank martial skill once in her previous life, and it was on the day of her coming-of-age ceremony. It was left behind by the ancestors of the Tianling dynasty and had always been treasured by the royal family. Originally, after she ascended the throne, she could officially start trying to cultivate the heaven-rank martial skill, But she couldn't wait until that day. However, even though it had been a long time, she still clearly remembered the scene when she saw the heaven-rank martial skill. She remembered everything that had happened back then clearly. She could confirm that the content on the last wall was indeed a heaven-rank martial skill. Chu Liyue's hands clenched into fists. The blood in her body seemed to be boiling, making her entire body seem to be burning. In fact, when she saw the content on the second wall, she guessed that the level of these things might be gradually increasing. The result was indeed so. There was even a heaven-rank martial skill. After the shock, Chu Liyue calmed down and started to think. No wonder Elder Emotsong said that only the dean could enter the 5th level. There was such a shocking secret hidden here. Once people knew about it, it would attract countless powerful cultivators to fight for it. At that time, Taiyin Academy would definitely not be able to hold on. Even the entire country Xinglua would be in trouble. However, Chu Liyue couldn't figure out why such a shocking existence would appear in this small country Xingluo's Taiyin Academy. She even suspected that the dean of Taiyin Academy didn't know what this thing was. If Chung Han knew, why didn't he choose to cultivate it? Even if he didn't understand the heaven-rank martial skill now, the finger technique, fist technique, and palm technique in front of it were extremely powerful. If he didn't know, you owe me again. The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice suddenly sounded. Chu Liyue was stunned for a moment before she reacted. That's right. The heaven-rank martial skill's pressure was extremely strong. If it wasn't in the legendary three-eyed eagle's god territory, it would have caused a huge commotion. From this point of view, the legendary three-eyed eagle had indeed helped her a lot. Okay, I'll remember it for now. Chu Liyue didn't mind and admitted it straightforwardly. The legendary three-eyed eagle was silent for a moment before it said coldly, "You're quite lucky." Chu Liyue's lips curled up. Of course. How could it be just not bad? It was simply heaven-defying. This was a heaven-rank martial skill. Some people might not even see it in their entire lives. She had only come to the library to read, and she actually had such a fortuitous opportunity. Even Chu Liyue couldn't help but sigh. This trip was really worth it. However, there was a very troublesome problem now. She didn't seem to have a way to take this god-stunning technique away. She had already memorized the god-stunning finger. The god-stunning palm and god-stunning fist were much more complicated, but she could completely memorize them as long as she read more. The most troublesome thing was the thing on the last wall. She realized that she couldn't remember the contents at all. The heaven-rank martial skill contained an extremely strong pressure. According to her current realm and strength, she couldn't comprehend it at all. Every time she finished reading it, it was as if there was a hand that forcefully erased those things from her mind. Moreover, after Chu Liyue tried a few times, she felt a little tired. She knew that this was the result of her forceful actions, so she didn't continue. She turned her gaze back to the 3 big words in front of her. God-stunning technique, she muttered softly. She had to leave here today. She had to think of a way as soon as possible. She really couldn't give up on the heaven-rank martial skill in front of her. She looked at her hand and suddenly had a question. How did she summon this god-stunning technique just now? Suddenly, there was a fluctuation in her dantian. Chu Liyue was slightly shocked. A water droplet appeared on her fingertip. That water droplet quickly changed, and then turned into a piece of transparent incomplete paper. The contents on the last wall were clearly reflected on it. Digression. A wave of action was about to come. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 356. The stars on the transparent remnant page shone brightly, and it actually flickered along with the words on the wall. Then, that thing flew back to Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue looked over, and when she saw what was on it, she immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. The content on the transparent remnant page was exactly the same as on the last wall. Every character, even every glimmer, was exactly the same. The size of this transparent remnant page was probably not even 1% of the wall. But when Chu Liyue looked at it, for some reason, she felt that those characters were reflected on the transparent remnant page, and they were still clearly visible, and even seemed a little small and empty. It was just a transparent remnant page, But Chu Luiyue felt that it seemed to contain a huge space that could accommodate everything. Chu Luiyue stretched out her hand, and the transparent remnant page flew back into her hand. She lowered her eyes and looked at it carefully. She saw that every character was clearly written on it. She opened her mouth, but was so shocked that she couldn't say a word. This transparent remnant page was actually a complete copy of the Heaven Tier martial skill on the last wall. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, Chu Luiyue wouldn't have believed what was happening. A Heaven Tier martial skill was such a powerful and sacred existence, yet it was so easily copied. Chu Luiyue closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and opened them again. Everything in front of her had not disappeared. She couldn't help but look at the wall again, but there was no change. In the next moment, her palm turned cold, and the remnant page turned back into a water droplet and returned to her dantian. Then, Chu Luiyue clearly felt that there was something extra in her mind. It was a Heaven Tier martial skill. Even though she was still unable to comprehend it, it truly existed in her body. This can be done. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but mutter. She only knew that the water droplet in her dantian contained an extremely vast power, and every time she encountered danger, it could save her life. But who would have thought that it could actually help her copy a Heaven Tier martial skill? No, it should be said that a Heaven Tier martial skill could actually be copied. That's not a copy. That's the power of the heavenly Tao that it contains forcefully taken away. The three-eyed eagle suddenly opened its mouth. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment. What? The three-eyed eagle said slowly. Take a look again. Chu Luiyue looked at the last wall again. There's nothing changed. Before she could finish her sentence, Chu Luiyue suddenly felt that something was amiss. The characters on it didn't change, but the overall feeling was indeed different. It was as if it had lost the indescribable sense of holiness and vastness from before. All that was left was a bunch of messy characters. The three large silver words floating in front of her gradually dissipated, and finally disappeared without a trace. The reason why it is the Heaven Tier martial skill, the Heavenly Tao. Now that this power has been taken away by you, the things left here have become completely useless. Without the guidance of the Heavenly Tao, other cultivators won't be able to comprehend it, even if they continue to look at it for 100 years. Chu Luiyue was enlightened. I see. In that case, the so-called power of the Heavenly Tao is equivalent to the soul of a Heaven Tier martial skill? Without this, the Heaven Tier martial skill is equivalent to being dead? Looks like you're not that stupid. The three-eyed eagle said coldly. Chu Luiyue didn't care about the three-eyed eagle's mockery. She was very tactful that it could tell her this. After pondering for a moment, she continued to ask, if I leave now and take the things with me, will others notice the abnormality here? The three-eyed eagle sneered with undisguised arrogance. Of course. In my god realm, everything is under my control. Even if you leave, no one will notice any changes here. Unless, he's an expert who can comprehend a Heaven Tier martial skill. Chu Luiyue felt slightly relieved. There shouldn't be such an existence in Tai Yin Academy. She nodded. Then let's go now. When Chu Luiyue came out of the library, it was almost noon. The two people in charge of guarding the door had lost a lot of weight after this period of torment. They looked very haggard. Therefore, when they saw Chu Luiyue walking out, their mouths were wide open in shock. Chu Chu Chu. The two of them stuttered for a long time, and only pointed at Chu Luiyue with trembling fingers. Chu Luiyue looked up at the blue sky and exhaled softly. Then, she said to the two of them, I came out early. The two of them were shocked and couldn't believe it. Really? Chu Luiyue could have stayed in there for a month. Now it's only been 10 days, and she's planning to end it? Chu Luiyue tilted her head and swept her gaze across the pile of books beside the two of them. Are these the books that record the books I've read? The two of them instinctively nodded. When they saw Chu Luiyue's seemingly smiling face, they suddenly recovered their senses and lowered their heads in embarrassment. They knew very well how many books Chu Luiyue had read. She had cleaned out the entire second floor and read quite a few books on the third and fourth floors. Even if she leaves now, she's read enough. If she really stays for a month, she'll probably destroy the entire library. Why you? I'll go get Elder Emotsong now. One of them hurriedly left. Chu Liwa didn't mind and waited at the same spot. 10 days have passed. I wonder what's the situation on Mu Qinghe's side. Country Yaochen, Imperial City Palace. Emperor Jiawen's face was terrifyingly dark as he stared at the Empress in front of him. I'll ask you again. Where's Rongzhen? The Empress was very anxious and anxiously explained. Your Majesty, let me explain. Hua! Emperor Jiawen suddenly swept the things on the table beside him to the floor and angrily said, I'm asking you. Where's Rongzhen now? The Empress was so frightened that she shivered. Her legs turned to jelly, and she knelt on the floor as tears streamed down her face. Your Majesty, I don't know where Rongzhen is. Emperor Jiawen was so angry that his face turned green. Because of country Xing Luo's matters, he didn't have the time to care about Rongzhen. After Rongjin left with the others, he then remembered that he hadn't seen Rongzhen for quite some time. Thinking that Rongzhen didn't come out on such an important day, Emperor Jiawen felt that she was a little insensible. Hence, he personally went to her bedroom to teach her a lesson. The Empress stopped him a few times, which made him even more suspicious. He directly ordered someone to break open the bedroom door. However, when he came in, he realized that Rongzhen wasn't here. He then realized that something was amiss and started to interrogate the Empress. At this point, Eunuch Min suddenly walked in from outside the door and whispered something into Emperor Jiawen's ear. Emperor Jiawen was shocked and furious as he harshly kicked the Empress's heart. Si Huijing, you've got guts. How dare you raise a secret guard? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 357. The Empress's heart skipped a beat. The matter was indeed exposed. She was anxious as she endured the pain in her chest and begged, Your Majesty, I don't have any intentions. Your Majesty, I don't have any other intentions. It's just for stability. After so many years, only Si Meng. You still dare to deny it? Emperor Jiawen was furious, and there seemed to be a fire burning in his eyes. The Empress was shocked. Emperor Jiawen had never been so angry at her. She actually knew that this matter had crossed Emperor Jiawen's bottom line. It didn't matter if there was 1 or 10. The important thing was that Emperor Jiawen had been kept in the dark about Si Meng's existence. This was equivalent to giving Emperor Jiawen and the entire palace guards a loud slap. Speak. Where are that traitor and Rongzhen now? The Empress cried and shook her head. Your Majesty, I really don't know. Si Meng died a few days ago, but Zhenzhen's whereabouts are still unknown. Emperor Jiawen stared at her with deadly eyes and sneered. Dead? Isn't this too much of a coincidence? It's true. I've been in contact with him, but we suddenly stopped a few days ago. He's indeed dead. Your Majesty, I didn't lie to you. Emperor Jiawen finally believed the Empress a little when he saw her like this, but the anger in his heart didn't decrease at all. We'll talk about whether he's dead or alive later. I want to know where Rongzhen is now. The Empress cried even more sorrowfully. Your Majesty, I've actually been secretly searching for Rongzhen these few days, but I didn't find any clues. I'm very worried, and I've been feeling uneasy these few days. Emperor Jiawen couldn't hold it in and kicked her again. If you're really uneasy, you should have told me long ago. If I didn't find out myself today, how long were you planning to hide it for? You're already the Empress, and your son is the Crown Prince. What are you still not satisfied with? The Empress knelt on the floor. Her hair was messy, and her clothes were dirty. She looked very disheveled. Eunuch Min stood behind Emperor Jiawen, and was terrified when he saw this scene. He had served His Majesty for so many years, but he had never seen His Majesty hit the Empress. He was clearly furious today. He didn't dare to dissuade him. It was bad enough that the Empress hid Rongzhen's disappearance, but she actually kept secret guards. Wasn't this going against His Majesty? Once this matter was exposed, she might not be able to keep her position as the Empress. Men, take the Empress away. At the same time, summon Si Yi to the palace. He wanted to ask Si Yiji if the Si family was planning to rebel. The Empress raised her head abruptly, her face full of panic. Was His Majesty going to imprison her? How could that be? Once the news got out, she would definitely lose her position as the Empress. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Please take into account that this concubine has served you for so many years, and let this concubine off this time. And Rongjin, no matter how you want to punish this concubine will accept it. However, if the country of Xingluo finds out about this, it will definitely have a huge impact on our marriage. The latter part of the sentence made Emperor Jiawen's heart waver. Not bad. Now that Rongjin is in country Xingluo, his marriage with Situ Xingchen can be confirmed if everything goes well. But if this scandal gets out at this time, he stared at the empress with a heavy gaze, which made her feel weak. Si Huijing, you sure have a good plan. She must have calculated all of this long ago. She purposely made Rongjin her last shield. He clearly knew that she purposely dug a hole for him, but he still had to jump into it. The empress's pale lips trembled as she averted her gaze. She didn't dare to look at Emperor Jiawen or speak again. After some time, Emperor Jiawen coldly said, "Pass on my orders. The empress has contracted a serious illness and is bedridden. Concubine Gu will be in charge of the harem affairs for now." The empress's heart sank. His Majesty is going to imprison me and take away all of my rights. Your Majesty. Emperor Jiawen bent down and harshly pinched the empress's chin as he said word by word, "I'll send someone to Rongjin. When Rongjin's matter is settled and Rongjin's whereabouts are revealed, I'll deal with you." Then he flung his wrist, and the empress fell to the ground. He turned around and left with big strides. Eunuch Min glanced at the empress and hurriedly followed him. The empress only heaved a sigh of relief when their figures completely disappeared. She suddenly took out something from her arms. Now all of her hopes were placed on Rongjin. The matter of the marriage alliance must go smoothly. Country Xingluo. The palace banquet to welcome Rongjin, and the rest was in progress. Many people were toasting Rongjin in the palace, and it was very lively. The reason for this was that country Xingluo's Emperor Mingzhen, Situ Chong, had just agreed to Rongjin's marriage proposal to Situ Xingchen. Both parties were officially in-laws. Situ Chong seemed to be very satisfied with Rongjin, and he even directly set the wedding date to be a month later. This made the crowd very confused. In the past, many aristocratic families had proposed to Situ Xingchen, but neither Situ Xingchen nor Situ Chong agreed. They originally thought that Situ Chong couldn't bear to part with his precious daughter, but they didn't expect him to directly agree once Rongjin came. Of course, everyone knew that this marriage was very important, and it must have been discussed beforehand. Now it was just a formality. However, the crowd still couldn't figure out why it had to be Rongjin. According to rumors, the crown prince of country, Yaochen, didn't have a good reputation recently. What surprised everyone was that Elder Zhongyi, who had just returned from Mingyue Tianshan, actually praised Rongjin. With him speaking, nobody dared to object. Thus, the matter of the marriage was successfully completed. Rongjin was really proud of being surrounded by the crowd. Looking at those people's jealous and envious gazes, he felt that he finally had an outlet to vent everything that he had suffered previously. With a face full of smiles, he toasted Situ Xingchen, who was sitting not far away. Situ Xingchen smiled and nodded gently, looking dignified and gentle. Rongjin was elated. What's mine will eventually belong to me. Suddenly, his expression changed, and he smiled at the surrounding people. I'm a little dizzy. I'll go out to take a breather. The crowd thought that he wanted to avoid the wine, so they laughed and didn't stop him. Rongjin hurriedly left the palace. Situ Xingchen squinted her eyes, stood up, and walked out of the palace. Rongjin walked to a secluded corner and took out a bell from his arms. At this point, the bell was vibrating, and the sound was very soft. However, Rongjin's face turned even uglier. Before he left, he especially left this twin bell behind. If Rongjin's matter was exposed, Mother would shake it. Did something happen on Mother's side? Your Highness. A gentle voice sounded. Digression. I'm so sleepy. I drank some coffee, and it really refreshed me. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 358. Rongjin immediately hid the twin bell and turned around to look. It was Situ Xingchen. Eldest princess. Why are you here? Rongjin forced a smile and asked. Situ Xingqian didn't seem to notice his unnatural expression as she smiled gently. I just drank some wine and felt a little dizzy, so I wanted to come out for some fresh air. I didn't expect to meet you coincidentally. Rong Jin nodded perfunctorily, as he was still thinking about Rong Zhen. Situ Xingqian glanced at him and asked uncertainly, "Why do you look so serious? You seem to have something on your mind." Rong Jin hid his smile and said, "Eldest princess, you're overthinking." Situ Xingqian's lips curved up into a smile, and her face blushed as if she were shy. "The crown prince and I are already engaged, yet you still call me that. You're treating me like an outsider. If you don't mind, you can call me by my name." Rong Jin was a little surprised, but his heart skipped a beat when he saw the faint blush on Situ Xingqian's innocent face. "Xingqian?" Situ Xingqian nodded, and her voice was as gentle as the wind that brushed past Rong Jin's heart. "If there's anything bothering you, you can talk to Xingqian about it. It won't be good if you keep it bottled up in your heart." Situ Xingqian's words seemed to have some magical power, as Rong Jin couldn't help but let down his guard. "Actually, it's nothing much. It's just some small matters." He slightly relaxed. Luckily, he had already settled his engagement with Situ Xingqian. If not, he really didn't know what kind of situation he would face when he returned. Situ Xingqian quietly looked at Rong Jin and acted like a patient listener. Rong Jin had drunk some wine, and he was a little tipsy. When Situ Xingqian looked at him with such a gaze, an impulse surged in his heart, and he couldn't help but blurt out some words. "Actually, my younger sister is in some trouble." Situ Xingqian blinked. "Fourth princess?" Rong Jin nodded with a solemn expression. "Fourth princess was fine when she was with Chu Luo previously. Why is she in trouble now?" asked Situ Xingqian confusedly. However, Rong Jin was shocked. "What did you say? You saw Rong Zhen and Chu Luo together?" Situ Xingqian nodded. "Yeah, 2 days before I came back." Rong Jin quickly recalled the time and shockingly realized that it was when Rong Zhen went missing. He stepped forward, grabbed Situ Xingqian's shoulders and anxiously asked, "Why are you here? Where did you see them? Do you know what they were doing at the time?" Panic flashed across Situ Xingqian's face as she looked down to hide the deep hatred in her eyes. "Your Highness, you're hurting me." Rong Jin hurriedly let go. "Sorry, I was a little agitated just now. Is what you said true?" Situ Xingqian looked at him in shock, as if she did not understand why he had such a huge reaction. "That's right. That day, I was planning to return to the inn to pack my things when I saw Chu Luiyue and the fourth princess leaving together. There was an old man following behind them. I was quite far away, so I couldn't see who he was. As for where they went, I'm not sure either." "What's wrong? Is this important?" Rong Jin's body trembled slightly, and he didn't say anything for a long time. "The old man following them is most likely Si Meng. This means that Rong Zhen's disappearance really has something to do with Chu Luiyue. Previously, his mother had mentioned it, but he did not think much of it. He only thought that his mother did not like Chu Luiyue, so she purposely dragged her into this. Thinking about it now, perhaps mother was right. Rong Zhen and Chu Luiyue did have a conflict between them. Since Si Meng was also there, it could be confirmed that Rong Zhen requested to leave the palace. It was very likely that she went to look for Chu Luiyue first. According to her personality, she would definitely do such a thing. However, he did not expect that Chu Luiyue would be unharmed, and Rong Zhen would disappear for no reason. There seemed to be a ball of fire burning crazily in his heart. "Your Highness! Your Highness!" Situ Xingqian called him twice with a worried look on her face. Rong Jin suddenly had an idea. "Is Chu Luiyue still at Taiyin Academy?" "That's right. Why are you suddenly looking for her?" Rong Jin was silent for a moment before he suddenly said, "Xingqian, can I ask you for a favor?" Situ Xingqian smiled slowly and gently said, "Your Highness, please go ahead." Elder Emotsong quickly arrived at the library. When he saw Chu Luiyue standing there, his heart skipped a beat. He then believed that Chu Luiyue was really planning to leave. When he first heard the news, he was still in disbelief. All the geniuses who won first place in the Qingjiao competition would make full use of the 1-month time limit. After all, it was a rare opportunity. However, Chu Luiyue only took 10 days. Elder Emotsang was surprised and elated. However, when he saw the stacks of books, his good mood was instantly shrouded in a layer of darkness. Even if Chu Luyue only stayed here for 10 days, he read more than others could finish in a few months. Now, Elder Emotsang could only hope that Chu Luyue only opened those books and did not read them in detail. Chu Luyue, have you really decided to leave? Asked Elder Emotsang solemnly with one hand behind his back. Chu Luyue smiled. Didn't you wish for this to happen a long time ago? Elder Emotsang snorted. Don't be too smug. Be careful not to bite off more than you can chew. Chu Luyue did not take it to heart and smiled. Don't worry, Elder Emotsang. I understand that. Elder Emotsang sized Chu Luyue up and thought to himself, for some reason, Chu Luyue seems to be in a good mood today. Thinking about it carefully, anyone who got the chance to borrow so many books for free, and even unlocked an Earth Stage Warrior Technique book would be overjoyed. On his way here, he had already confirmed that Chu Luyue did not find any other Earth Stage Warrior Technique books after that day. This was considered a blessing in disguise. Since you've made up your mind, then, I'll bring you to the entrance of the academy. Taiyan Academy had a strict barrier. If Chu Luyue wanted to leave, she needed Elder Emotsang's permission. Chu Luyue nodded. Then I'll have to trouble you, Elder Emotsang. Elder Emotsang sneered in his heart. He did not fall for it, and waved his sleeves. Let's go. Chu Luyue did not mind Elder Emotsang's attitude and followed after him. The two of them walked towards the entrance of the academy one after another. Along the way, Elder Emotsang's face was cold, and he did not say a word. Chu Luyue was tactful, and did not say anything. Anyway, she had already gotten what she wanted the most. These cold faces and sarcastic remarks were nothing to her. Elder Emotsang extended his hand, and was about to open the barrier. Chu Luyue stood at the side and waited quietly. Suddenly, a deep and cold voice sounded. You're not allowed to leave. Digression. Today, Xiaoxiang seemed to have delayed the mobile phone user's browsing experience again. A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 359. Upon hearing this voice, a cold glint flashed across Chu Luyue's eyes. She then calmed herself down and looked back calmly. The person who spoke was Cheng Han. Director? Why are you here? Elder Emotsang was shocked. Cheng Han had been busy investigating Yang Jianqing and Heng Jingshua, so he hadn't shown up for a few days. He didn't expect to suddenly appear now. You said that you're not letting her go. Are you referring to Chu Luyue? Cheng Han strode over with a serious face. That's right. Elder Emotsang was stunned. For a moment he was at a loss. Didn't the director want Chu Luyue to leave as soon as possible? Now that she's finally leaving, why isn't he letting her go? Director, what are you? Cheng Han stood 3 steps away from Chu Luyue with a cold expression. Chu Luyue, you know why I'm stopping you, right? Chu Luyue's heart skipped a beat. Did he find out about the God-stunning technique? That shouldn't be the case. Cheng Han shouldn't be able to find out about this given his abilities. A polite smile appeared on her calm face. Director Cheng Han, I don't know what you're talking about. You don't know? Cheng Han sneered. No one knows better than you what you've done. Rongjin will be here soon. You should save your excuses for him. Rongjin? Chu Luyue secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It seems like it's not because of the God-stunning technique. But, what does this have to do with Rongjin? She knitted her brows slightly. From Cheng Han's point of view, Chu Luyue's expression clearly showed her guilt and fear after being exposed. Seeing Cheng Han's gloating gaze, Chu Luyue suddenly remembered something. If I remember correctly, Rongjin should be in country Xingluo by now to marry Situ Xingchen. Just as she was thinking about this, she heard footsteps behind her. Cheng Han looked over, and a long-awaited smile appeared on his face. Chu Luyue turned around. Who else could it be other than Rongjin who was walking in from the door? His expression was anxious, and his footsteps were hurried. It was obvious that he had rushed over from somewhere. The two of them looked at each other for a moment. Rongjin suddenly stopped in his tracks. Along the way, he had been thinking about how to interrogate Chu Luyue when he saw her. But now that he saw her in person, his mind suddenly went blank. In his heart, he He was actually unwilling to confront Chu Luiyue face to face. But Chu Luiyue saw the struggle that flashed across Rong Jin's eyes, and he narrowed his eyes. Then she saw Situ Xingchen behind Rong Jin. She was one step behind Rong Jin, and seemed to have accompanied him here. When she looked up and saw Chu Luiyue, she was also shocked. Obviously, she did not expect to bump into her here. However, she quickly adjusted her expression. She nonchalantly shifted her gaze away, and walked to Rong Jin's side. Your Highness, if you have something to say, we can talk it out. Don't be angry. Chu Luiyue raised her brows high. Since when did Situ Xingchen and Rong Jin become so close? They seem to have only met a few times, right? Rong Jin glanced at Situ Xingchen and nodded. Don't worry. I know what to do. Chu Luiyue crossed her arms and was in deep thought. I just entered the library to read for a few days, but many things seem to have happened outside. Director Chung Han. Thank you for stopping her for me. Rong Jin cupped his fists and bowed to Chung Han. Chung Han waved his hands. It's just a small matter. It's not worth mentioning. Xingchen told me that I must help you, so I naturally won't reject it. Rong Jin looked at Situ Xingchen gratefully. Thank you. Don't delay His Highness's work, said Situ Xingchen gently. Chu Luiyue finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. If she hadn't personally seen the cloud pattern on Situ Xingchen's clothes, and how she looked when she faced Rong Xiu, she would have really thought that Situ Xingchen had a crush on Rong Jin. Other things aside, her acting skills are really good. Upon hearing this laugh, Rong Jin instinctively felt that Chu Luiyue was mocking him, and his face couldn't help but change. Chu Luiyue, what are you laughing at? Chu Luiyue shrugged his shoulders. Nothing. Your Highness, why are you looking for me? Just tell me. Why do you have to make such a big fuss? Rong Jin paused and asked in a low voice. Is it Rong Jin's fault? Is Rong Jin's matter related to you? Chu Luiyue's eyes sparkled. What? Upon seeing her reaction, Rong Jin's heart wavered. She really doesn't seem to know. However, Situ Xingchen clearly said that she saw Chu Luiyue and Rong Jin together. I'm asking you, did you do something to Rong Jin previously? A thought flashed across Chu Luiyue's mind. I did this very secretly, so logically speaking, nobody should have noticed. However, the Empress might know that it was me. After all, the Empress most likely knows what Rong Jin did previously. It seems very normal for her to tell Rong Jin this guess. But why does Rong Jin look like he's very certain about this matter? Chu Luiyue shook his head. Your Highness, I really don't know what you're asking. Shouldn't the fourth princess be in country Yao Chen's palace now? Why are you finding trouble with me? Rong Jin finally couldn't hold it in as he stepped forward and suppressed his voice. Don't pretend anymore. You must be behind Rong Jin's disappearance. Someone saw her with you before she went missing. Chu Luiyue blinked, and his clear eyes were enveloped in a faint layer of confusion. The fourth princess went missing? When did this happen? Upon seeing her expression, Rong Jin suddenly hesitated. Does Chu Luiyue really not know? Chu Luiyue's gaze turned slightly, and he looked at Situ Xingchen with interest. She thought that she knew how Rong Jin found out. Eldest Princess Situ, may I ask, was it you who told His Highness the Crown Prince that you saw me with the fourth princess? Situ Xingchen bit her lips and knitted her brows, looking very pitiful. I did see you. I'm sorry. I didn't know that the fourth princess went missing. I just said it unintentionally when His Highness asked. I didn't do it on purpose. Chu Luiyue's lips slowly curved up. Very good. This one sentence easily turned his suspicions into certainty. Rong Jin's disappearance was indeed related to her. However, she didn't remember when she was with Rong Jin. Before leaving the Imperial City, she didn't even show her face. Situ Xingchen was lying. Chu Luiyue, what else do you have to say now? Seeing that Chu Luiyue didn't say anything for a while, Rong Jin thought that she was guilty, so he spoke again. After pausing for a moment, he continued. I know that Rong Jin isn't dead yet. As long as you hand her over, I promise that I won't kill you. Chu Luiyue coldly glanced at him. Your Highness, are you going to convict me based on her one-sided words? Digression. There's one more update later. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from LoveWeb. Chapter 360. Of course not. As long as you can produce evidence to prove that you didn't do it, no one will make things difficult for you, said Rongjin. Chu Liyue's lips curved up slightly. This means that I have to find a way to prove my innocence to clear my name when others slander me and pour dirty water on me? However, I don't know how to prove something that I didn't do. Rongjin was speechless. Actually, if he wasn't worried about his and his mother's future situation, he wouldn't want to force Chu Liyue like this. After all, Rongjin's disappearance had already been exposed, and his father definitely knew about Meng's existence. According to his understanding of his father, the latter point might be more serious than the former. Now, he could only think of a way to find Rongjin to salvage the situation. Isn't this just your side of the story? I can't believe it completely either. If you're not guilty, follow me back to the Imperial City now. Clarify things in front of father and mother personally. As he spoke, he reached out to pull Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue moved her feet lightly and easily avoided his actions. Rongjin was stunned. Chu Liyue's cultivation level was lower than his, but she was clearly stronger than him now. This made him feel even worse, and he felt an indescribable sense of suffocation. When he was with Situ Xingqian, he didn't feel this way. Thinking of this, he became a little impatient. Why? Are you guilty? Before Chu Liyue could speak, Cheng Han said coldly, You've already left the library. Anyway, you've already left the library. Isn't it just nice to go back with Rongjin? Rongjin was secretly shocked. Chu Liyue actually only stayed here for such a short period of time? But if that's the case, it's even better. The few of them focused their gazes on Chu Liyue, clearly wanting her to agree to this suggestion. Chu Liyue's gaze turned cold. She hated it when people forced her to do things, especially when this person was someone she detested. What if I don't agree? Once she said that, the surrounding atmosphere instantly froze. Country Yaochun Imperial Study. Rongqi stood outside the door, looking anxious. Eunuch Min, I'll have to trouble you to inform him again. This prince really has something important to report to Imperial Father. Eunuch Min looked troubled. Your Highness King Ping, it's not that I don't want to help you, but there's really no way to help you. His Majesty had lost his temper this time, and he was still angry. If you go in now, not only will you not be able to help the Empress, you will make things more troublesome. Listen to my advice and go back first. When His Majesty is in a better mood, it won't be too late for you to plead for leniency. Rongqi frowned. Eunuch Min, why don't you believe me? This prince really didn't come here to plead for Imperial Mother. She really had something important to tell Imperial Father. If we delay any longer, the consequences will be unimaginable. Eunuch Min still refused to agree, and kept persuading him. Now that the Empress was under house arrest, the fourth princess was missing, and the crown prince was far away in Xingluo country. Only the fifth prince, Rongqi, was left. Under such circumstances, how could he not come here for the Empress and the rest? Seeing that Eunuch Min refused to help no matter what, Rongqi finally panicked and shouted at the study. Imperial Father, I have something important to report. I beg you to let your son in. Eunuch Min was scared out of his wits, and hurriedly went forward to stop him. Oh my, Your Highness King Ping, what are you doing? If you disturb His Majesty, what do you think we should do? Please stop shouting. Rongqi refused to listen and shouted even louder. Eunuch Min complained incessantly. This prince usually looked like he was not very capable, but he could cause so much trouble when he caused a ruckus. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and persuade King Ping. Eunuch Min hurriedly urged the palace servants beside him to stop him. It was nothing to offend Rongqi, but if he angered His Majesty at this time, he would be courting death. Rongqi was quickly lifted up by the palace servants and taken away. He was anxious and finally could not help but shout. Imperial Father! Imperial Father! I know where Zhenzhen is. Eunuch Min was shocked. The next moment, Emperor Jiawen's voice was heard from the study. Come in. The palace servants hurriedly let go of Rongqi. Rongqi tidied up his appearance, and harshly glared at the crowd before entering the study. Once he entered, he saw Emperor Jiawen sitting there and looking at him sternly. He couldn't help but tremble, and the arrogance he had before instantly dissipated. Imperial father. Where is Rongjin? Asked Emperor Jiawen straightforwardly. Rongqi hurriedly explained. Imperial father, actually I'm not sure yet. But don't be angry. However, I already know who hid Rongjin. As long as we catch that person, we can definitely find Rongjin. He stuttered as he spoke, and his forehead was filled with sweat. Fortunately, he had already said what his mother had instructed him to do. Emperor Jiawen leaned forward and enunciated every word clearly. Who is it? Rongqi pressed his lips against each other and said a name without hesitation. Chu Luiyue. Chu Ning had just finished his work. He closed his eyes and rubbed his glabella. He looked tired, but the corners of his lips could not help but curl up. Calculating the time. Today is the day that you should be back. I have to go back earlier today. Lord Chu Ning. Lord Chu Ning. Bad news. A subordinate hurriedly ran over with a face full of panic. Chu Ning opened his eyes and knitted his brows. What's wrong? His Majesty ordered us to search your residence. They're almost at your residence now. Chu Ning suddenly stood up. What? Digression. Everyone sleep early. Mobile users please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 361. Get in. Search the place thoroughly inside and out. Don't miss a single corner. Yes. With Lu Yun's order, the guards immediately rushed forward, intending to knock down the door of the Chu residence. When Chu Ning arrived, he happened to see this scene. Lu Yun. He immediately yelled out. How dare you? Lu Yun looked back and saw Chu Ning hurrying over with a group of people. Not only was there not the slightest trace of panic on his face, he even revealed a gloating smile. Oh, isn't this Lord Chu Ning? You're busy with government affairs. Why are you suddenly here in broad daylight? Chu Ning quickly stepped forward with a cold expression. This is my residence. Let's see who dares to barge in. When he spoke, he contained the powerful aura of a stage 5 warrior, immediately causing Lu Yun to feel a tightness in his chest. Even the guards standing at the door were fearful. They couldn't help but stop and look at each other. Lu Yun was annoyed and the smile on his face gradually faded. Lord Chu Ning, what are you doing? I'm here today on His Majesty's orders. If you really want to stop me, you're defying the orders. Chu Ning stared at him coldly. I naturally don't dare to defy His Majesty's orders. But even if you want to search, you have to give a reason, right? After all, I'm the commander of the Imperial Guards. I'm sorry, Lord Chu Ning. We're just following orders. If you really want to know the reason, why don't you find His Majesty personally? Lu Yun snorted and waved his hand. Continue. Yes. Chu Ning was about to step forward when Zhao Ming suddenly persuaded in a low voice. Lord, you must calm down. This time, they're here on His Majesty's orders. If this matter blows up, it won't do you any good. His Majesty might even think that Chu Ning was defying the orders. Chu Ning took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. All right, since that's the case, I'll see what you can find. He had never done anything wrong, so naturally, he wasn't afraid of this. But why did His Majesty suddenly act like this? Lu Yun saw Chu Ning lowering his head and felt smug. During this period of time, Lu Yao had been harmed miserably by the Chu family. The worst ones were Chu Ning and Chu Luiyue. If they hadn't deliberately stirred up trouble, Lu Yao would still be in control of the Chu clan's finances. How could they have fallen to the point where they were hated by everyone? He wasn't on good terms with Lu Yao, but Lu Yao was still a member of the Lu family. Her reputation was ruined, and the Lu family was implicated as well. More importantly, she still had to go back and ask the Lu family for money to fill those holes. He was dissatisfied with Lu Yao, and even more resentful of Chu Ning and his daughter. Now that he had a chance to deal with them, he would definitely not miss it. Dong! The door was slammed open. Numerous guards swarmed in. Lu Yun flashed a provocative smile at Chu Ning, then stepped inside. Chu Ning frowned and followed closely behind. The group of people had already spread out, quickly and violently searching the courtyard and rooms. Lu Yun stood in the middle of the courtyard, hands behind his back, issuing orders without pause. That room. Go in and look for it. And the one next to him. We've searched thoroughly. Did someone go to the backyard? If you find anything out of the ordinary, report it immediately. Chu Ning was standing not far away. She clearly saw those people throwing out many things from his bedroom: mattresses, bookshelves, clothes. Even things like tea sets, brushes, and ink were thrown on the ground outside. Many things were broken, and the floor was in a mess. Lu Yin turned around to look at Chu Ning. When he saw the latter's ugly expression, he couldn't help but move closer and persuade him proudly. Lord Chu Ning, don't be angry. This is His Majesty's decree. Instead of being angry, why don't you think about what your precious daughter has done? Chu Ning's gaze sharpened as he stared at Lu Yin. What did you say? Lu Yin shrugged nonchalantly. Chu Ning's brows furrowed even tighter. He never thought that this matter had something to do with you. What did you do for His Majesty to issue such an order? While he was thinking, he suddenly saw those people about to rush into Chu Liyue's room. How dare you? Chu Ning shouted sternly. In a flash, he appeared in front of those people. Lu Yin raised his brows. Oh, Lord Chu Ning, are you really going against His Majesty? Chu Ning's gaze swept across the crowd as he enunciated each word clearly. You can search if you want, but if you dare to damage anything in here, don't blame me for being merciless. His aura was extremely strong, and coupled with his stern voice, it made everyone fearful. Even Lu Yin couldn't help but shudder as he forced himself to speak. Didn't you hear me? Be careful. Chu Ning finally moved aside after hearing his words. Those people no longer had the excitement from before, and they walked in carefully. Chu Ning stood at the door, his gaze like a sharp blade scraping back and forth between them. Lu Yin felt very aggrieved, but he also knew that if he angered Chu Ning, he wouldn't have a good ending. Thus, he could only swallow his anger. When they found something, he would definitely ask His Majesty to punish Chu Ning severely. Chu Ning stared at these people's movements, as he kept thinking about why His Majesty suddenly did this. You went to Taiyan Academy 10 days ago, and hadn't been home during this period. What were they looking for here? Just as Chu Ning was puzzled, someone suddenly shouted from outside. Master, Lord Lu. Found it. Chu Ning was shocked, and immediately turned around. He saw a guard suddenly run over from the backyard, and quickly rushed to Lu Yin, presenting the item in his hands. Lord Lu, please take a look. Lu Yin picked up the hairpin and took a closer look. His expression changed, and he sneered at Chu Ning. Lord Chu Ning, the evidence is conclusive. What else do you have to say? Chu Ning quickly walked over. What are you talking about? Lord Chu Ning, why are you acting dumb? Lu Yin raised the hairpin in his hands and sneered. This hairpin is the fourth princess's accessory, but it has now appeared in your backyard. Are you still going to deny it? Chu Ning was stunned for a moment before he suddenly understood. Fourth Princess Rongzhen went missing, and His Majesty even put the Empress under house arrest because of it. Not many people knew about this, but as the Imperial Guard's commander-in-chief, he was well aware of it. And now, the missing fourth princess's accessory had been found in their house. Are you suspecting that you hid the fourth princess? Chu Ning blurted out. It's not a suspicion. Now that we have evidence, it's a fact. Lu Yin put away the hairpin and looked at him mockingly. Lord Chu Ning, please come with us. Prince Li's mansion. Rong Xiu was taking a nap on a rattan chair when Umo quickly ran over. Your Highness, Lord Chu Ning has been arrested. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 362. Rong Xiu opened his eyes, and there seemed to be ripples in the depths of his eyes. When did this happen? Just an hour ago. Lu Yin brought people to the Chu family to search, and found fourth Princess Rongzhen's hairpin. They confirmed that Ms. Lu Yu hid the fourth princess. As Ms. Lu Yu hasn't returned yet, they brought Lord Chu Ning away. They should be in the palace by now. Umo quickly explained the situation. He glanced at his master's expression and asked tentatively, What's the matter? Master, what do you think we should do now? Rong Xiu's thin red lips curved up into a perfect arc with some laziness. However, the corners of his eyes and brows were cold like the chill of spring. They sure know how to choose the time. Umo was dazed before he reacted. Now that Chu Liyue isn't in the Imperial City, they'll definitely interrogate Chu Ning. In addition, they've found the so-called evidence. So they'll be even more confident. Chu Ning might suffer a lot. Now that Mu Qinghe is still in the Imperial City, even if Chu Liyue comes back, they won't dare to do anything to him. However, they can still make Chu Liyue suffer if they target Chu Ning. You're saying that they're planning to take this opportunity to take revenge? Rongxiu lightly said. Rongxiu is missing. Si Meng is exposed, and the Empress is in danger. Naturally, they won't give up this opportunity. To the Empress, it wasn't important whether she could find Rongzhen or not. The important thing was to find out who hid Rongzhen. It was obvious that they were planning to push all the blame to Chu Liyue. This way, part of Emperor Jiawen's anger would definitely be transferred to Chu Liyue. Even if Chu Liyue had Mu Qinghe's relationship, and Emperor Jiawen wouldn't dare to do anything to him, it would still be beneficial for the Empress and the rest to escape punishment. Yuemo worriedly asked, why? In that case, aren't they planning to bite Ms. Liyue and Lord Chuning to death? Rongxiu's smile turned cold. That's why there's that hairpin. Yuemo sucked in a cold breath. You're saying, roar. A low and angry roar was suddenly heard. Yuemo looked up and saw a strong white lion suddenly appear in front of him. It was Shueshue. There was a fire in its icy blue eyes. Rongxiu glanced at it, and Shueshue walked over and lay beside his feet. Since the Empress wants to make a fuss, let's let her. Fourth princess must be lonely and scared recently. You should go and play with her later. Rongxiu's voice was as cold and low as usual. His last syllable was slightly raised with a hint of laziness. Shueshue mastered Shueshue. Shueshue licked its claws unwillingly. That Rongzhen was dirty, smelly, and only knew how to squeak. It really hated her. Unfortunately, it didn't dare to disobey its master's orders. Sigh. I miss someone so much. Thinking of this, Shueshue lifted her head and looked at Rongxiu. Rongxiu glanced at it. No. Shueshue's huge head shook and moved closer, as if trying to act cute. Rongxiu's voice was slightly cold. She played with you for a long time last time, right? Seems like you think it's too much? Shueshue's body stiffened. He had actually been discovered. Didn't it just let Chu Liyue accompany it in the forest for a while? It had not seen her for a long time. Shueshue stood up and left resentfully. Yuemo glanced at it, and actually felt that its huge and muscular back revealed a trace of sadness. He coughed and retracted his gaze. Master, about Lord Chu Ning. Third brother doesn't seem to be doing anything recently, Rongxiu suddenly said. Yuemo was dazed and nodded. Yes. His Majesty hasn't let the third prince leave the Imperial City. Everyone thinks that he wants to take over the third prince's military power, so there aren't many people who interact with him. Rongxiu picked up the book beside him and casually flipped it open. That's good too. Did the Northwest Army get in touch with him? According to your instructions, everything is going smoothly. Besides, the third prince doesn't know about this. Yuemo was confused as he spoke. Your Highness, aren't you worried that you're helping the third prince like this? Rongjiu has military power in his hands. If things continue to develop, nobody knows what Rongjiu will do. The Empress and the Crown Prince should be worried. Rongxiu flipped open a page of the book and seemed to be unconcerned about this. Go and tell third brother about the fourth princess. Yes. Palace. Emperor Jiawen sat at the head of the table, while the Empress sat at the side. She was holding the hairpin that Lu Yin found as tears streamed down her face. This is indeed Jinzhen's. I gave it to her on her 13th birthday. Her nickname is engraved on it, so there's no doubt about it. Poor Jinzhen. I've let her down. Emperor Jiawen stared at Chu Ning sternly. Chu Ning, what else do you have to say? Chu Ning lifted his sleeves and knelt on the floor. Your Majesty is wise. I really don't know where this hairpin came from. I also don't know where the fourth princess is now. However, I can use my life to guarantee that this has nothing to do with you. Emperor Jiawen was also very conflicted. He knew what kind of person Chu Ning was. Since he was willing to swear, it meant that he really believed that Chu Liyue didn't do it. But how could he explain the hairpin? Lord Chu Ning, take it that I'm begging you. Just tell His Majesty and this consort where Zhenzhen is right now. The Empress looked at Chu Ning with tears all over her face, as if she was heartbroken. As long as she's fine, I won't pursue the other matters. Chu Ning's face tensed up. Your Majesty, I won't admit to anything that I didn't do. The Empress's eyes turned, and she wiped her tears as she tried to ask. Then is it possible that Chu Lua did it, but you don't know about it? Chu Ning looked at her coldly. Your Majesty, do you want me to identify my daughter as the culprit behind the kidnapping of the fourth princess? I didn't mean that. Zhen has been missing for a few days, and His Majesty and I are very worried. I don't want to think this way, but this hairpin really can't be denied. Emperor Jiawen kept quiet for a long time before he said, That's right. Why don't we wait for Chu Luyue to come back from Taiyan Academy before we interrogate him together? The Empress quickly gave Rongqi, who was at the side, a look. Rongqi immediately said, Father, you mustn't. If Chu Luyue really did it, then Lord Chu Ning will definitely find a way to cover it up. Why don't we lock him up first and interrogate him strictly? This way, we won't have to be afraid that Chu Luyue won't tell the truth when he comes back. Emperor Jiawen knitted his brows. The Empress immediately scolded him. Rongqi, how can you treat Lord Chu Ning like this before the verdict is out? Rongqi said aggrievedly. I'm doing this for Zhen. Emperor Jiawen thought for a long time and finally said, Guards, lock Chu Ning up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 363. Your Majesty, the third prince wishes to see you. The announcement was suddenly heard. Everyone in the palace was shocked. Emperor Jiawen knitted his brows. Tell him that I'm busy, and ask him to wait in the Imperial study. Eunuch Min wiped the sweat off his forehead. Your Majesty, the third prince said that he must see you immediately. Emperor Jiawen's face turned even uglier as he slammed the table. He's getting more and more brazen. The matters in the past 2 days had already made him very frustrated, and he didn't expect Rong Jiu to join in the fun. Rong Jiu has always been well behaved in the Imperial city. Why is he suddenly like this? Eunuch Min shuddered and wanted to cry. Your Majesty, the third prince said that he came today because of the fourth princess. Oh! Emperor Jiawen was a little surprised as he knitted his brows. He doesn't have much contact with Zhen. What happened today? At the side, the Empress's heart skipped a beat, and she felt uneasy. The last time Rong Jin was grounded was because Rong Jiu complained to His Majesty. I wonder what he's up to today. She worriedly persuaded him. Your Majesty, we shouldn't air our dirty linen in public. It's better not to blow up Zhen's disappearance, right? It's better for the royal family and Zhen to investigate. If the third prince is involved, it won't be easy. Emperor Jiawen thought for a moment and shook his head. Rongjiu has always been calm. Since he dares to come, he must know something. As he spoke, he raised his hand at Eunuch Min. Let him in. Yes. Eunuch Min hurriedly went outside the palace and invited Rongjiu in. The Empress secretly bit her lips, and for some reason, she became even more nervous. Very quickly, Rongjiu walked in with big strides. He had been on the battlefield for many years. Even though he was only 20 years old and younger than Rong Jin, he had a strong physique and a strong aura around him. Even though he was wearing a robe, it couldn't hide his general's murderous aura. This was the aura that one would only have after experiencing a life-and-death battle on the battlefield. Rong Jiu's gaze quickly swept across the palace, and it paused on the Empress especially for a moment. The Empress's heart skipped a beat as she hurriedly looked away. Your son greets Imperial father and Imperial mother. Rong Jiu stood still in the palace, cupped his fists and bowed to Emperor Jiawen and the Empress. Emperor Jiawen didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. There's no need to be so formal. You said earlier that you knew some news about Rongzhen. Is that true? Rongjiu nodded. This son requests an audience with Imperial father today precisely because of this. Emperor Jiawen sat up straight. Speak. Rongjiu's gaze landed on Chu Ning. When I was outside, I heard that Imperial father was planning to imprison Lord Chu Ning. Emperor Jiawen was confused, but he didn't deny it. That's right. Rongjiu shook his head. Imperial father, you mustn't do this. You've wrongly accused Lord Chu Ning. I can confirm that Lord Chu Ning has nothing to do with this matter. Once she said that, not only Emperor Jiawen and the Empress, but even Chu Ning was shocked. This, Rongjiu actually came to speak up for me? Chu Ning quickly recalled in his mind. He didn't seem to have much interaction with the third prince. At such a critical moment, anyone who gets involved will be in trouble. Others can't wait to avoid it, so why is he? Rongjiu, do you know what you're saying? Emperor Jiawen's expression instantly became stern, and his voice was filled with authority. Rongjiu's expression didn't change. I know. In actual fact, not only Lord Chu Ning, but even Chu Luyue also has nothing to do with this matter. The Empress finally couldn't hold it in anymore. Third Prince, do you know that Lu Yin has already found Jinjin's hairpin in Chu Ning's house? The evidence is conclusive, and you can't deny it. Why are you speaking up for Chu Ning and his daughter like this? Rongjiu revealed a meaningful smile as he looked at the Empress and slowly said, Her Majesty, did Rongjun really drop that hairpin in Lord Chu Ning's house? The Empress's heart skipped a beat. What did you say? I heard that Lord Lu Yin brought people to search back then, and Lord Chu Ning's family. Everyone knows that after severing ties with the Chu family, Lord Chu Ning and Chu Luyue have been living in a new mansion. They didn't even hire any servants. During the search, only Lord Chu Ning was there. If someone purposely brought this hairpin over and lied about finding it there, who would discover it? Even if Lord Chu Ning had 3 heads and 6 arms, I'm afraid he can't keep an eye on everyone, right? Emperor Jiawen's expression changed slightly. Rongjiu's words did make sense. The Empress secretly tightened her grip on the chair's armrest. Third Prince, this hairpin was found in the backyard. Many guards at that time can testify. Could it be that they are all lying? Rongjiu paused and suddenly asked, Her Majesty, may I know if the hairpin in your hand is the one you found in Lord Chu Ning's house? The Empress was flustered by his words, so she nodded subconsciously when she heard him ask this. Yes, this is it. That's it. Rongjiu's expression became even more thought-provoking. This hairpin is exquisite and very eye-catching. Even if I'm standing here, I can still see it from such a distance. I wonder if Lord Chu Ning and Chu Luyue are blind. That's why they couldn't see this hairpin, and purposely left it in the yard. The Empress retorted in a panic. Perhaps Chu Luyue was too flustered back then, so she didn't notice it. After all, the yard is very big. She can't see every corner. Her Majesty, you said that this hairpin was found in the backyard, and many guards saw it with their own eyes. Why are you talking about corners now? Rongjiu's nonchalant words made the Empress stop talking. The entire palace suddenly fell into dead silence. Chu Ning's expression turned serious. Your Majesty, I was in the front yard back then, and the guards were in the backyard. I really didn't see them find the hairpin. Emperor Jiawen stared at the Empress, and his gaze gradually turned cold. Empress, what else do you want to say? I just made a slip of the tongue. The Empress hurriedly knelt down. Your Majesty, I've been in the palace all this while and never went out. I also didn't see the scene back then, so I naturally don't know what happened. I just made a slip of the tongue. Rongjiu lightly glanced at her in a seemingly smiling manner. Her Majesty, it seems like this matter really has nothing to do with you. Of course not. Zhenzhen is my daughter. Now that she's missing, I'm naturally the most anxious. Hatred flashed across the Empress's eyes. Now she could tell that Rongjiu came here today to drag her down completely. She looked up and anxiously looked at Emperor Jiawen. Your Majesty, everything I said is true. Situ Xingqian personally saw that Zhenzhen was with Chu Luyue before she went missing. I can testify. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 364. This sentence was no different from a sudden clap of thunder, suddenly exploding. Everyone in the hall was shocked. Even Rongjiu knitted his brows slightly. Emperor Jiawen asked in a low voice, Why are you here? Are you telling the truth? Situ Xingqian really said that? The Empress nodded repeatedly. If you don't believe me, you can ask Situ Xingqian. Chu Ning suddenly said, Your Majesty, where did you hear this from? Of course, Situ Xingqian said it herself. At this point, the Empress couldn't care less, and could only confess that she had been communicating with Rongjin. Situ Xingqian told Rongjin about this, and Rongjin told her about it. I know I'm in the wrong, but Rongjin did it for Rongjun. Your Majesty. Emperor Jiawen felt his head hurt. Things seemed to be getting more and more complicated. Everyone had their own version of the story, and what they said differed greatly. Someone must be lying, but he couldn't immediately tell. Seeing that Emperor Jiawen's expression wavered for a moment, the Empress immediately said, Don't worry. Your Majesty, Situ Xingqian already knows about Rongjun's disappearance. This time, she plans to come back with Rongjin to help find Rongjun. Why don't we wait for them to come back and confront each other? Emperor Jiawen disagreed. Chu Luyue is going to Taiyan Academy for a month, and only 1/3 of the time has passed. If we keep waiting for her, Rongjun. Your Majesty, you will be back soon. She said earlier that she would only be gone for 10 days. Chu Ning said. These words surprised the others. Chu Luyue only stayed for 10 days for such a rare opportunity? Emperor Jiawen kept quiet for a while and finally decided. Since that's the case, let's wait for them to return and ask them together. The Empress finally heaved a sigh of relief. Her body went limp, and she almost fell to the ground. With Situ Xingqian as a witness, Chu Luyue definitely can't escape this time. At that time, even if she didn't die, she would still make her lose a layer of skin. Imperial Father is wise. This way, they would definitely be able to find Rongjun as soon as possible. And Lord Chuning wouldn't be wronged for no reason. Lord Chuning has always been loyal to you. It wouldn't be good if Lord Chuning's feelings were hurt because of some misunderstanding, said Rongjio as he cupped his fists. The hall fell silent for a moment. Everyone knew that the so-called misunderstanding was caused by the Empress. Emperor Jiawen's gaze became much darker. All of you can leave first. The Empress stayed. Chu Ning walked out of the palace and thanked Rongjio solemnly. Thank you for your help this time, Third Prince. Otherwise, he might really be locked up. Rongjio looked nonchalant. Lord Chu Ning, there's no need to be so polite. I'm helping you because I'm helping myself. Chu Ning was taken aback. He did not expect Rongjio to be so honest. Of course, he could guess Rongjio's purpose for coming here today. From start to end, Rongjio only targeted one person, the Empress. Especially the words he said just before he left the hall. It gave the Empress a push. The reason why Rongjio did this was most likely because his birth mother, noble Lady Ying, was harmed by the Empress back then. Even though this matter wasn't conclusive, and there was no evidence, Chu Ning was in the limelight back then, and was highly regarded by Emperor Jiawen. Thus he more or less knew some things. Looking at Rongjio's appearance, he clearly came prepared. No matter what, I have to thank you, Third Prince. I'll definitely repay this favor in the future. Rongjio did not seem to care. The two of them chatted for a while before parting ways. Chu Ning hesitated for a while, and decided to return to his residence first. Previously, Lu Yin brought so many people, and turned the house into a mess, so he had to hurry back to clean it up. If Yuer saw this, she would definitely be very worried. In the end, Chu Luyue did not return with Rongjin and the rest. She only used one sentence to dissuade Rongjin from stopping her. I've already arranged a time to go back with Vice Admiral Mu. Whoever delays it will be responsible. Rongjin had just gotten married to Situ Xingqian, and was in the prime of his success. He originally wanted to show off his authority as the crown prince in front of Chu Luyue. But it was a pity that he was not completely blinded by it. He knew who he could offend, and who he could not. Thus, he could only sullenly give way to Chu Luyue. As for Situ Xingqian, she did not say much from start to end, and stayed out of the matter. It was as if she had forgotten that Rongjin only came to find trouble with Chu Luyue. After hearing what she said, Chu Luyue returned to the Imperial city very quickly and successfully. The moment he reached home, the door was opened from the inside before Chu Luyue could even knock on the door. The person standing at the door was Chu Ning. When Chu Luyue saw him, he was elated and shocked. Father, why are you home? It's not a day off today. Chu Ning first sized her up, and made sure that she was fine, before he heaved a sigh of relief. You are, it's good that you're back safely. I have something to ask you. The father-daughter duo returned to the house together. Chu Ning told Chu Luiyue everything that happened previously. You are. Does the fourth princess's disappearance have anything to do with you? Asked Chu Ning uncertainly. Chu Luiyue smiled, and his eyes curved into crescents. Didn't you say it in front of His Majesty? You said that you believed that I didn't do it. Since you said so, this naturally has nothing to do with me. Chu Ning then heaved a sigh of relief. That's good, that's good. I heard from the Empress that Situ Xingqian saw you with Rong Zhen, so I was a little worried. With Situ Xingqian's status, her words carried a lot of weight. He believed in his daughter, but the development of the matter seemed to be a little out of control. Chu Luiyue smiled nonchalantly. I know about this. Before I came back, Rong Jin wanted me to take responsibility for Rong Zhen's disappearance, because he heard Situ Xingqian talk about this. Chu Ning knitted his brows. Situ Xingqian has no feud with us, so why did she say all this? Chu Luiyue's eyes sparkled. She probably saw wrongly. Chu Ning didn't quite believe it. What kind of person is Situ Xingqian? She definitely knows what kind of effect these words will have if she says them. This will most likely harm you. If she really saw wrongly, she shouldn't have made such a big fuss without confirming it. This really doesn't fit the image of Situ Xingqian in the rumors. This Situ Xingqian is a little strange, muttered Chu Ning. Chu Luiyue didn't want him to worry, so he patted his arm and smiled. Father, don't worry. I know what I'm doing, and won't let anyone bully me. Chu Ning's worry didn't completely disappear because of this. But His Majesty said that he wants you to confront each other when you come back. What should we do? If Situ Xingqian insists that you did it. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up slightly. My pleasure. Digression. She felt hungry as she wrote, so she ran to wolf down another bowl of noodles. Writing is really tiring. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 365. Chu Luiyue then went to visit Mu Qinghe, but she found that he wasn't at his residence. She waited outside the barrier for a while, but there was still no movement, so she turned around and left. She felt a little strange. If Hong Yao was here, it would have rushed out long ago. Since there was no sound for so long, Hong Yao and Mu Qinghe must not be here. What place and country, Yao Qin's imperial capital, could attract him? Chu Luiyue was puzzled as she turned to Prince Li's mansion. Prince Li's mansion was the same as usual. It didn't seem to have changed, but Chu Luiyue keenly noticed that the security here had become stricter. Seeing that it was her, the servants of Prince Li's mansion immediately welcomed her happily. When Yuemo heard the news, he hurriedly came out to welcome her. Miss Luyu, you're finally back. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh when she saw his excited face. It's not my first time here. Do you have to be so excited? Of course. Of course. You don't know, but we've been looking forward to your return these past few days. Yumo's eyes were almost brimming with tears. If she didn't come back soon, their lives would be too difficult. Master is in the study room. I'll bring you there. As he spoke, Yuemo led Chu Luiyue to the study room. Chu Luiyue followed behind him and quietly sized up the layout of the mansion. She realized that it was indeed a little different from before. She took in all of this, but she didn't show it on her face, nor did she say anything. Soon, the two of them arrived outside the study room. Yuemo stopped. Master is inside. You can go in. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. Just as she walked to the door, a white figure flashed in front of her. She was very surprised. Xue Xue. She hadn't seen Xue Xue since she left the imperial capital. She really missed it. Xue Xue looked at her with its tail wagging, its eyes filled with joy. It was obviously very happy about her return. It jumped twice on the spot and couldn't help but run 2 laps around Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue chuckled. All right, I know what you want. As she spoke, she stretched out her hand, intending to pat Xue Xue's head. Xue Xue obediently moved its huge head closer. Whoosh! Chu Luiyue's hand was halfway out when a red shadow flashed in front of his eyes. Immediately, he felt something extra on the back of his hand. She looked over and saw that it was Dumpling. At this moment it was hugging her wrist. Its round eyes looked at her innocently and sadly, as if it was complaining about something. Chu Luiyue glanced at his hand. Very good. He was already completely occupied by Dumpling. It was impossible for him to touch Shue anymore. Shue growled. Just as she was about to charge forward, she suddenly heard a cough coming from the room. Shue immediately moved to the side obediently and looked straight ahead, as if nothing had happened before. Dumpling turned around and gave it a look of disdain. Chu Luiyue was speechless. She looked at the door of the study and walked forward. Creak! The door of the study opened. Chu Luiyue saw Rong Xiu sitting behind the table. He was wearing a black cloak, and his face was a little pale. There was a cup of hot tea beside him, and a book in his hand. He just sat there quietly, and there seemed to be an indescribable aura lingering around him. He was gentle and calm like a gentleman. Hearing the sound of the door being pushed open, he raised his head. The moment he lifted his eyelids, there seemed to be countless stars flickering in his deep and clear eyes. This time, it was completely different from the previous time. Those eyes seemed to be able to contain everything in the world, but they were also high and mighty, noble and lazy, looking down on the world. The moment their eyes met, Chu Luiyue could clearly hear her heart beating violently. The blood in her eardrums surged and seemed to be buzzing. Rong Xiu's lips curved. "You're back." Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. "Yes." Rong Xiu raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly. The door behind Chu Luiyue was suddenly closed. The dazzling sunlight was blocked outside the door. Rong Xiu opened his mouth, and his voice was as cold as jade striking against each other. "I thought you wouldn't have time to come until tomorrow." Chu Luiyue was stunned. Then an incredible idea came to her mind. Rong Xiu was jealous. Based on his means and strength, she was probably already under his control from the moment she returned to the capital. However, she first went to see her father, then went to visit Mu Qinghe, and finally came to Prince Li's mansion. Rong Xiu seemed to be unhappy because of this. Chu Luiyue couldn't help laughing. "How could I?" Rong Xiu's eyes moved slightly, but he didn't say anything. Chu Luiyue approached him step by step. Until there was only a table between them, she bent down, put her hands on the table, and approached Rong Xiu. The two were so close that they could almost hear each other's breathing. Chu Luiyue could even smell the familiar cold fragrance on him. Her heart beat faster, but her eyes were as bright as the Milky Way. "The reason why I came to see you last is because..." She didn't finish her words, but suddenly leaned closer and kissed Rong Xiu's lips. It was cool and hot, slow and urgent. Rong Xiu didn't seem to expect Chu Luiyue to suddenly do this, and he was stunned for a moment. Chu Luiyue whispered softly, and her voice was broken between her lips and teeth. "That's the answer." Of course, she missed him, and wanted to come back to see him as soon as possible. But there were some things that needed to be dealt with first. Otherwise, the two of them would only meet for a short time, and she would have to busy herself with other things. So, she might as well settle all the messy things on hand before coming. Without any burden, she felt refreshed. The only thing she didn't expect was that she missed Rong Xiu more than she imagined. It wasn't obvious when she was in Taiyin Academy, and it wasn't obvious on the way back. Even when she just arrived at Prince Li's mansion, she didn't think much of it. But the moment she saw Rong Xiu, an overwhelming longing suddenly surged in her heart. The longing that she had intentionally or unintentionally suppressed instantly drowned her. Her mind seemed to be blank, and there was only one thought left. Kiss him. Only when she touched his soft and cool lips did she finally feel at ease. After a while, when she saw that Rong Xiu didn't move, she bit him lightly in a fit of pique. Rong Xiu reached out to pull her, and at the same time counterattacked. However, Chu Luiyue lightly licked his lips and quickly moved away. She leaned toward his ear and gently placed her hand on his cloak as she softly asked, "Why are you here?" "Rong Xiu, aren't you hot?" "Oh, I almost forgot. Prince Li is seriously ill, and now is the time to recuperate. You can't, Rong Xiu's eyes instantly darkened. The next moment he suddenly grabbed Chu Luiyue's chin with one hand, tilted his head, and kissed her fiercely. If he could still tolerate this situation, he would really be sick. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 366. After Rong Xiu was satisfied, he finally let go of Chu Luiyue slowly. He lowered his eyes and looked at the girl's red and slightly swollen lips. He rubbed his fingers affectionately and spoke lazily in a hoarse voice. Looks like you made the right decision. Chu Luyue snapped out of her daze and immediately glared at him. However, her watery eyes didn't have any fierceness. Instead, they looked even more breathtaking. Rongxiu chuckled and kissed her again before finally letting go. Come here. Chu Luyue walked around the table to his side and leaned over to look at the book he had put aside. What are you looking at? Every time she came, Rongxiu seemed to be reading. She glanced at it and saw that it seemed to be a biography. Rongxiu held her slender waist and pulled her into his arms. Chu Luyue leaned against his chest just like that. Rongxiu rubbed her waist with one hand and took the book with the other. Do you want to read it? Chu Luyue felt that Rongxiu's hand seemed to have magical powers. He only pressed her waist twice, and a wave of heat spread through her body. She felt as if her entire body had gone limp and relaxed. She relaxed her body and felt that the fatigue she had felt during this period of time seemed to have lessened quite a bit. She took the book and looked up in surprise when she saw the name on it. You moved out of the academy? She remembered seeing this book in Yifeng Courtyard. Rongxiu didn't find it strange that she remembered, so he nodded nonchalantly. Mother's things have basically been packed, so there's no need to continue living here. Of course, another important reason was that the person in his arms wouldn't be staying there for too long. Chu Luyue recalled the things he had taken out from Juyo Tower and nodded in understanding. She unintentionally flipped open the book and took a look. Rongxiu had been pretending to be sick ever since he returned to the imperial capital. He rarely stepped out of Prince Li's mansion and basically stayed here. Hence, she was actually quite curious about what Rongxiu usually read. However, Chu Luyue was suddenly stunned with just a glance. It was actually a map. And it was a map of the imperial capital. After she was reborn, she had specially investigated the situation of the imperial capital, including the overall terrain of the imperial capital. Hence, when she first saw this map, she immediately recognized that it was a map of the imperial capital. What shocked her even more was the detailed distribution of the military forces on the map. The entire imperial capital's defense situation. Chu Luyue's heart skipped a beat. So, what Rongxiu was not reading books every day? She instinctively looked up at Rongxiu. Rongxiu's expression was normal, as if he didn't think it was a big deal at all. Chu Luyue thought that he didn't expect her to be able to understand this thing, and couldn't help but tug at his clothes. Rongxiu, you read this every day? Rongxiu glanced at her expression, and his lips curved up slightly. Not every day. I read it occasionally to relieve boredom. Chu Luyue was speechless. Relieve boredom? What kind of person would think that reading this kind of thing was relieving boredom? With this map, Rongxiu could easily control the entire imperial capital. If he had the military forces, it was only a matter of time before he broke into the imperial capital. Chu Luyue's lips moved and finally couldn't help but ask, why are you looking at the map of the imperial capital? She originally thought that Rongxiu would look shocked, but a smile surfaced on his face instead. He bent down and kissed Chu Luyue's glabella. You can really understand it. Chu Luyue instantly felt complicated. Rongxiu already knew that she had seen through what it was, but he didn't seem to want to hide it at all. You aren't worried that I'll say this? As a prince, it wouldn't be a good thing if Emperor Jiawen found out that he had such a thing in his hands. Rongxiu raised his brows and said matter-of-factly, You're my fiancé. You are this prince's fiancé. If something happens to this prince, you won't be able to escape. Chu Luyue was speechless. Why does this tone sound like he's saying, You're my woman when you're alive, and you're my ghost when you're dead? Rongxiu lifted his chin. You can continue reading. Chu Luyue hesitated for a moment and flipped to the back. After looking at it for a while, she realized that they were all similar maps. Even though every map was different, they were all equally detailed. As Chu Luyue looked at them, she became more and more shocked. These maps, they seemed to involve half of country Yaochen. Perhaps even the military might not have such a detailed map. Chu Luyue was really shocked. Rongxiu, look at these. What exactly are you planning to do? If it weren't for the fact that Rong Xiu didn't have any military power, she would have really thought that Rong Xiu was planning to rebel. It's just a boring pastime. Rong Xiu really didn't seem to care. When he saw her shocked expression, he couldn't help but chuckle softly and hug her tighter. Her worried look for me is really touching. Chu Luiyue subconsciously turned her gaze and looked at the bookshelf behind him. It was filled with books. A scary thought suddenly appeared in her mind. Could these also be? She long knew that Rong Xiu was much stronger than he looked on the surface, but what she saw in front of her was still beyond her imagination. What are you thinking about? Asked Rong Xiu. Chu Luiyue looked at him sympathetically. I'm thinking that Rong Jin is really unlucky to have met you. Rong Jin thought that his crown prince position and even the throne were already in his bag after he set the marriage agreement with Situ Xingchen. Little did he know, Rong Xiu raised his brows. He wasn't interested in comparing himself to Rong Jin, but since it was her compliment, he still chose to accept it. Chu Luiyue placed the book back and continued to nestle in Rong Xiu's arms. Rong Xiu rubbed his chin against her soft hair. Let's not talk about this. Why don't we talk about the wedding date? Chu Luiyue was dazed and knitted her brows awkwardly. We really need to discuss this matter properly. Mu Qinghe is still in the Imperial City, and I don't know when he'll return to the Tianling dynasty. If he's leaving soon, we won't have time to get married. If he wants to wait for a while, we can hold our wedding. However, I don't know when I'll have to follow him back to the Tianling dynasty. The road ahead is dangerous, and I don't know what kind of situation I'll face when I return. If Rong Xiu is involved, it'll be even harder to handle. Of course, I can't bear to leave Rong Xiu, but I have to go back to the Tianling dynasty. She knitted her brows and thought for a long time. Suddenly, she stood up and left Rong Xiu's arms. She sat opposite him with a serious expression. Rong Xiu, I have something to tell you. Rong Xiu looked at her with deep eyes. I'm all ears. The next day, Rong Jin and Situ Xingchen finally returned to the Imperial City. Chu Luiyue was sitting cross-legged at home. She placed her hands on her knees and absorbed the surrounding heaven and earth force. Suddenly, Eunuch Min's voice came from outside the door. Lord Chu Ning, Ms. Lu Yu, His Majesty and Her Majesty are waiting in the palace. Please come in. Digression. Yesterday, I slept at 3 o'clock again. I was about to go crazy. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 367. Palace. When Chu Luiyue arrived with Chu Ning, Emperor Jiawen, and the Empress were already waiting in the palace. Rong Jin and Situ Xingchen were also seated below. On the other side was another person, Rong Jiu. Chu Luiyue had already heard about what happened from Chu Ning, so she wasn't surprised that Rong Jiu was here. Her gaze quickly swept across the few people in the palace. Emperor Jiawen was expressionless, but his eyes were dark. Compared to the last time she saw her, the Empress looked much more haggard, as if she had aged by 10 years. It was obvious that the recent events had tortured her quite a bit. When Rong Jin saw Chu Luiyue, a complicated expression flashed across his face. He was holding a hairpin in his hand. Chu Luiyue guessed that it was the one that they said they found Rong Zhen in their backyard. Situ Xingchen and Rong Jiu looked calm, and one couldn't tell what was going on. Chu Ning and Chu Luiyue bowed one by one. Emperor Jiawen told the two of them to sit down. Okay, since everyone is here, let's start. Emperor Jiawen had already lost his patience, so he went straight to the point as he looked at Situ Xingchen. He looked at Situ Xingchen and asked, Xingchen, you previously said that you saw Lu Yu and Zhen Zhen together. Is that true? Situ Xingchen stood up and bowed. Your Majesty, I don't dare to lie, and everything I said is true. As Juyo Tower caught fire that day, I remember it very clearly. After Juyo Tower collapsed, I quickly went back to pack my luggage, because Taiyan Academy was leaving the next day. I didn't expect to coincidentally see Rong Zhen and Chu Luiyue on the way. Emperor Jiawen asked, was there anyone else then? There was an elder in a long black robe, but I didn't see his face. Then did you hear what they said? I was quite a distance away, so I didn't hear them. However, I saw that the two of them were very close, so I thought that they were very close. I didn't expect. Emperor Jiawen's face turned even colder. The elder in a long black robe, who followed them, was definitely Si Meng. If Situ Xingqian was lying, how did she know about Si Meng's existence? Actually, when I saw this scene that day, I felt a little strange. Situ Xingqian looked up at Emperor Jiawen and hesitantly said, "That's because His Majesty had just married Prince Li and Chu Luyue that day. So when I saw her with Rong Zhen, I was confused for a long time." Everyone understood. The timing was too special. No matter how close Chu Luyue and Rong Zhen were, they shouldn't have been together on the day of Rong Zhen's marriage. Moreover, who didn't know that there was a conflict between the two of them? It was really suspicious that they were together. Emperor Jiawen asked again. "And then, did you see where they went?" Situ Xingqian shook her head. "At that time, I only took a glance from afar. Because I was in a hurry to go back, I left. I don't know where they're going." Emperor Jiawen nodded. "Sit down." Then, he turned to look at Chu Luyue. "Luyu, you heard what I said just now. What do you have to say?" Chu Luyue lightly knocked on the chair's armrest with one hand and looked at Situ Xingqian in deep thought. What she said just now was actually very vague, but Si Meng's existence gave her words a lot more credibility. After all, even Emperor Jiawen didn't know about Si Meng's existence previously. Since Situ Xingqian could say this, it was naturally easy for people to believe her. This also meant that Situ Xingqian had long known about Si Meng's existence. Perhaps she even knew what happened that day. But for some reason, she couldn't say it completely, and could only choose a middle ground. After all, even if that was the case, she could still push Rong Zhen's matter to her. Chu Luyue lightly said, "I didn't see Rong Zhen at all. That day, I didn't see Rong Zhen. That day, Prince Li sent someone to send me and my father home. After that, the people of the Chu family sent an invitation, and my father went there. I stayed at home the whole time and didn't come out. The Chu family can testify to this." Quite a few people knew that Chu Ning went to the Chu residence, and it was privately discussed for a long time. Everyone knew that the Chu family regretted chasing Chu Ning and his daughter out, and was thinking of ways to persuade them to go back. Chu Ning said, "That's right. That's right. That day, you wanted to go back with me, but I stopped her, so she stayed at home." Even if that's the case, who can prove that she didn't go out when you left, Lord Chu Ning? Rong Jin retorted. "Besides, the two of you are father and daughter, so I'm afraid your testimony can't be completely true." Chu Ning knitted his brows slightly. If the other party kept saying this, they couldn't refute him. This was because he and Yuer really couldn't prove that Yuer was at home during this period of time. Chu Luyue suddenly said, "That mysterious hairstyle was discovered by the Chu family. I heard that the hairpin appeared out of nowhere. Even Her Majesty the Empress couldn't tell where it came from. Then, how can everyone know that the rest of your words are true?" The Empress was furious. Chu Luyue really touched a sore spot. His Majesty was already very unhappy with her because of this hairpin yesterday. Now that she brought it up again, isn't she trying to make His Majesty look bad? Rong Jin knitted his brows and hid the hairpin in his hands. He originally thought that this hairpin was solid evidence, but it was hard to say what exactly was going on from his mother's reaction. Both parties insisted on their own words, and the situation was at a standstill. Rong Jiu suddenly said, "Actually, the key to this matter is to find Rong Zhen's whereabouts. Her Majesty, Rong Zhen's pearl of essence has shattered. Based on her own abilities, she definitely can't leave the palace silently. This also means that she must have left with Si Meng's help. Even though Si Meng is already dead, didn't he leave behind any clues?" The Empress was even more frustrated. She knew that every time she mentioned Si Meng, it would make His Majesty even more unhappy and disgusted. But now, if she wanted to push all the blame to Chu Luyue, Si Meng was a very important person. She rubbed her temples and said, "No. Si Meng died suddenly. Si Meng died very suddenly." Speaking of this, she suddenly paused and looked at Chu Luyue suspiciously. "Oh right. Speaking of which, Si Meng is a stage 5 warrior, and normal people aren't his match. The person who can kill him so quickly must be very strong. There aren't many people with such standards in the entire Imperial city." Chu Luyue raised his brows and smiled as he asked, "Why?" Does Her Majesty suspect that I killed him? Aren't you thinking too highly of a rank 2 warrior like me? Love Network provided a better reading experience. Chapter 368. The Empress smiled coldly. You're indeed just a stage 2 warrior, but everyone in the Imperial City knows that you can win against a stage 4 warrior. Perhaps you didn't display your true abilities at the Qingjiao competition? Other than you, who else would know about this? Besides, there's also that weird fiend of yours. She was talking about Dumpling. Back then, Dumpling directly swallowed Hung Jingshua's force, which left a deep impression on many people. The Empress always felt that Chu Luyue was unpredictable. Previously, Rong Zhen had mentioned that Chu Luyue went from a useless person to a genius that everyone envied because she met with a fortuitous encounter. Perhaps Si Meng was really killed by her, or the person behind her. Also, you also went up to the 6th floor of Jiuyou Tower previously. How do you explain this? The more the Empress spoke, the more certain she sounded. Emperor Jiawen, and the rest's expressions gradually changed. The Empress's words sounded ridiculous at first, but upon closer thought, it wasn't impossible. In the past few months, too many strange things had happened to Chu Luyue. Things that seemed impossible to others seemed to be reasonable when it came to her. As for Si Meng's death, it was hard to say. Chu Luyue was caught between laughter and tears. Thank you for thinking so highly of me, Your Majesty. But if it's really like what you said and I killed Si Meng, why didn't I directly kill the 4th princess as well? Wouldn't everything be over if I did that? The Empress was stumped. Rongjin angrily said. Of course, it's because you're afraid of exposing your identity. As a princess, Rongzhen has something that can help her. Once you force her into a corner, she'll definitely expose your identity and location. Chu Luyue looked at Rongjin, as if he were looking at an idiot. Your Highness, let me remind you that Her Majesty just said that I can instantly kill a stage 5 warrior. Do you think that the 4th princess's abilities and reaction are stronger than a stage 5 warrior's? Rongjin was speechless, and his face turned red and white. Si Meng must be by Rongzhen's side. If Chu Luyue could kill Si Meng, it would be even easier to kill Rongzhen. She could definitely solve everything before Rongzhen sent out a distress signal. The Empress's face turned even uglier. She was the only one who knew that the item Rongzhen was asking for help wasn't with her, but with Si Meng. Ever since her pearl of essence shattered, Si Meng had always been by her side, never leaving her side. For the sake of safety, they had already made preparations for this. However, saying these things now would prove that the person who killed Si Meng was more powerful than expected. Instead, it would make His Majesty even more disgusted. Rongjin looked at Situ Xingqian at the side awkwardly and softly said, Don't worry. Xingqian, what do we do now? Situ Xingqian sneered in her heart, and her hatred for Rongjin increased. Rongjin was even more brainless than she expected. She had no idea how he had managed to sit on the crown prince's position for so long. Situ Xingqian looked down, and her eyelashes fluttered as she innocently and sincerely said, Your Highness, I only saw what happened. Your Highness, Xingqian only saw that much that day. I've already said what I can, but there's more that I'm powerless to do. Rongjin was a little anxious. According to what you said, Rongzhen must have been hidden by Chu Luyue, but she doesn't admit it now. Your Highness, I didn't say that. It's just that you said that the 4th princess met with trouble, so I unintentionally told you about this. Is it because that elder's identity is a little troublesome? Situ Xingqian discreetly removed herself from this matter. However, Rongjin didn't realize this at all. On the contrary, Situ Xingqian's words reminded him of something. Chu Luyue, you've said so much, but you still haven't proven your innocence. On the other hand, Xingqian has never been to country Yaochen before, so she doesn't know about Si Meng's existence. If she's lying, how did she know about Si Meng? Besides, she has no feud with anyone involved in this matter, so why would she frame you? On the other hand, Rongzhen offended you before, so you probably want to use this chance to take revenge, right? Chu Luyue's gaze landed on Situ Xingqian, and he smiled meaningfully. Your Highness, you're right, but I really don't understand. Eldest Princess Situ and I have never interacted before, And we don't have any feud. I really don't know why eldest Princess Situ would frame me like this. Situ Xingqian looked at Chu Luiyue calmly, and her expression was as gentle and generous as usual. Miss Chu, I didn't frame you. From the start to the end, I just said what I saw and heard. Chu Luiyue's eyes turned, and her gaze landed on Situ Xingqian's sleeves. When she saw Situ Xingqian again at Tai Yin Academy, she realized that Situ Xingqian had changed her clothes, and the cloud pattern on her sleeves was gone. When she looked at it again today, it was still the same. Chu Luiyue didn't believe that Situ Xingqian didn't know that Rong Xiu had burned most of his clothes that day. If she didn't feel that she was greatly humiliated, she wouldn't be like this. It was obvious that eldest Princess Situ had shifted her anger onto Lin Mingya. The Empress took the chance to say, Your Majesty, Xingqian's words are indeed more trustworthy. On the other hand, Chu Luiyue still doesn't have any evidence to prove where she was that day. From what I see, we won't be able to get anything out of her if this continues. Why don't we lock her up and order someone to interrogate her carefully? We might be able to come up with a different conclusion. The palace fell into a temporary silence. The Empress clearly meant that she wanted to torture Chu Luiyue. Chu Ning stood up first. Absolutely not. I definitely can't watch you or be locked up without doing anything. What kind of place is the dungeon? How can you or go to such a place? Besides, nobody knows if the Empress's men are inside. Once you or goes in, I don't know what she will have to endure. Vice Admiral Mu is still in the Imperial City, and he will bring you to the Tianling dynasty at any time. If we lock you up now, may I ask your Majesty, how are you going to explain this to Vice Admiral Mu? Bringing up Mu Qinghe indeed made the Empress a lot more fearful. Then, what do you think we should do? Are we just going to let it pass like this? At this point Rong Jiu, who had been sitting at the side and keeping quiet, suddenly spoke. Actually, it's very simple. As long as we find Rong Zhen, the truth will naturally be revealed. The Empress sneered. You make it sound so simple. We still have to ask Chu Luiyue if he's willing to hand Zhen over. Rong Jiu's expression became strange as he stood up and bowed to Emperor Jiawen solemnly. I'm guilty. Father, please punish me. Emperor Jiawen knitted his brows tightly. Rong Jiu, what are you doing? Rong Jiu said word by word. I saw the fourth princess a few days ago. Mobile users, please browse the internet for a better reading experience. Chapter 369. His words were like a clap of thunder. The Empress and the rest were dazed and shocked. Even the calm Emperor Jiawen couldn't help but stand up. What did you say? You saw Rongzhen previously? When and where is it? Rong Jiu paused and said, You should ask her this question. Perhaps it's more appropriate for you to ask Her Majesty. The moment these words were spoken, everyone present was stunned. The Empress was confused. Rong Jiu, what do you mean? Rong Jiu slowly said, I know what she means. I believe the Empress is well aware of what I mean. You clearly know where Rong Zhen is. So why do you have to pretend that you don't and even create such a big show? The Empress was almost confused by Rong Jiu's words. Her exquisite brows knitted together as she stared at Rong Jiu. She finally realized that Rong Jiu was here to go against her this time. Her voice instantly turned cold, and it had the usual sternness of the harem. Rong Jiu, do you know what you're saying? Ever since Rong Zhen went missing, I've been worried day and night. Even now I'm still worried about her. You have no evidence, so how can you say such things? As she spoke, she turned to look at Emperor Jiawen, and her eyes were filled with anger and sadness. Your Majesty is wise. I really don't know where Rongzhen is now. I also don't know where the third prince's words came from. Emperor Jiawen stared at Rong Jiu coldly. What do you mean by what you said just now? Rong Jiu's gaze swept across the Empress as he lightly said. What do you mean? From the start to the end, this is a lie that the Empress directed and acted out herself. She hid Rongzhen and wanted to take the chance to slander Lord Chu Ning and his daughter. Rong Jiu's low and powerful voice reverberated in the palace, and it was clear and audible. Chu Liuyue's heart tingled, and he couldn't help but look at Rong Jiu. He never expected Rong Jiu to say such things. How dare you? After the shock, the Empress finally recovered her senses. She had nowhere to vent her anger, so she couldn't help but curse. What nonsense are you spouting? Rongjio, where do you think this place is? Who do you think this consort is? How dare you make such irresponsible remarks? As she spoke, she quickly rushed toward Rongjio and raised her hand to harshly slap him. This consort must teach you a lesson today. Empress! Emperor Jiawen coldly scolded and immediately nailed the empress to the ground. She suddenly recovered her senses and frantically turned around to see Emperor Jiawen glaring at her with anger. As the empress, what are you doing? The empress suddenly came back to her senses. She had indeed lost her bearing as an empress. Emperor Jiawen was extremely disappointed in the empress. Rongjio only said a few sentences, and the empress was agitated to this extent. She screamed and insulted him without any grace. She even wanted to hit him in front of him. What was the difference between her and those shrews on the streets? She had completely disgraced the royal family. Sensing Emperor Jiawen's anger, the empress was afraid and aggrieved. Your Majesty, I know my mistake. But Qinxia didn't do it on purpose. Did you hear what Rongjio said just now? Even though I'm not his birth mother, I'm still considered his mother. Yet he slandered me like this. As the empress spoke, 2 rows of tears fell from her eyes. She clutched her handkerchief tightly with one hand and covered her chest, as if she were in extreme pain. When Rongjio heard the words birth mother, murderous intent flashed across his eyes. It was fine if she didn't mention this, but now that she did, that *tch, the empress, actually has the cheek to say such things. He lifted his clothes and knelt on the floor with a bang. What I've said is the truth. If there's even half a lie in what I said, may I be struck by lightning. This was a vicious oath. Once this was said, even the empress, who was busy crying, couldn't help but pause for a moment. Chu Luiyue squinted his eyes and looked at Chu Ning questioningly. Chu Ning slightly shook his head, indicating that he didn't know what was going on. Chu Luiyue retracted his gaze and sized up Rongjio again. How strange. Rongjio has never interacted with us, so why does he keep speaking up for us this time? He's even willing to put his life on the line. As a prince, his words carry a lot of weight. As expected, Emperor Jiawen's expression changed. If Rongjio dares to make such a vicious oath, then what he said is very likely true. Empress, what exactly is going on? Emperor Jiawen had already lost his patience as he angrily asked. The empress shivered, and her tears flowed even more profusely. I really don't know. Since Her Majesty doesn't want to admit it, then I'll remind you. Do you still remember Heptagon Alley? Asked Rongjio lightly. The empress suddenly paused and looked at Rongjio in shock. How does he know that place? Emperor Jiawen boomed. If I didn't remember wrongly, Heptagon Alley used to be a very lively place in the Imperial city. However, after a murder happened, it was gradually abandoned. Father, you're wise. The current Heptagon Alley can be said to be deserted and very quiet. But for some reason, that place is highly favored by Her Majesty. After I returned to the Imperial city, I didn't have much to do, so I occasionally strolled around the Imperial city. Unintentionally, I saw Her Majesty at Heptagon Alley twice. The Empress's heart suddenly sank. Emperor Jiawen glanced at the Empress. Continue. The first time was 1.5 months ago. At that time, I saw Her Majesty from afar, and I thought I saw wrongly. After all, Heptagon Alley was very deserted, and not many people would go there normally. But because I was curious, I waited nearby for a while. After an hour, Her Majesty left. I followed closely behind, and wanted to see what exactly was going on. However, I shockingly discovered that there was an extremely strong barrier in Heptagon Alley. The Empress's face was already ghastly pale. Rongjin suddenly thought of something, and his eyes shrunk. As I was worried that I would be discovered, I left. After a month, which was more than 10 days ago, I was curious and couldn't hold it in. So I went to Heptagon Alley again. I didn't expect to coincidentally see Her Majesty walk out there. Upon hearing this, Chu Luiyue also looked at the Empress and saw her anxious expression, as if she had lost her mind. I met her twice in a row, so I couldn't help but be suspicious. However, I didn't have a clue, so I didn't say anything. Coincidentally, I met Rong Zhen on the streets the day before, and I realized that the last place she went to was Heptagon Alley. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 370. Impossible. You're lying. The Empress finally couldn't hold it in and screamed. Her hands trembled as she pointed at Rongjio. Due to her anger and panic, her originally well-maintained face became distorted. Zhen is missing. She had already lost contact with Rong Zhen for many days. If Rong Zhen was really at Heptagon Alley, how could she not know? Previously, she had already asked the Xi family to secretly search the entire Imperial city, but there was no news. After the matter was exposed, Emperor Jiawen also sent people to search everywhere, but there were still no clues. She almost suspected that Rong Zhen had been brought out of the Imperial city. Yet, Rongjio suddenly jumped out and said that Rong Zhen was at Heptagon Alley. Rongjio looked at the Empress's finger that was almost poking his face and saw the beautiful and sharp armor on it. His lips twitched without much of a smile. Her Majesty, why are you so agitated? Whether it's true or not, we just need to send people to search, and the truth will be revealed. Anyway, Heptagon Alley is in the Imperial city. It won't waste too much time to send people to search. No. The Empress almost instinctively objected. But once she said that, she suddenly realized that something was amiss. Behind her, Emperor Jiawen's voice was cold. I think this is a good idea. Since Rongjio said that Rong Zhen is there, we just need to find her there. If we find her, it proves that Rongjio is telling the truth. If we don't, Rongjio, do you know what consequences you will have to bear? Rongjio looked calm. I know. If Rong Zhen isn't at Heptagon Alley, I'm willing to never leave the Imperial city again. Emperor Jiawen was stunned as he didn't expect Rongjio to make such a request. Actually, during this period, he had been thinking about how to arrange for Rongjio. Let him return to the Northwest Army? Impossible. That's no different from letting a tiger return to the mountain. Let him stay in the Imperial city. That's not appropriate either. Rongjio has many military achievements, and he's at his peak. It's too obvious to abruptly remove him from his military position. In actual fact, before this, Emperor Jiawen had already received many memorials requesting for Rongjio to return to the Northwest Army. But he had many worries in his heart, so he kept putting this matter aside. But this time, Rongjio took the initiative to suggest that as long as he didn't find Rong Zhen in Heptagon Alley, he would stay in the Imperial city forever. On the one hand, Emperor Jiawen wanted to find Rong Zhen. On the other hand, he wanted to use this chance to make Rongjio stay. No matter how he looked at it, it was beneficial to him. Therefore, he agreed to this suggestion without any hesitation. We will go there personally. Get ready, eunuch Min. The Empress' legs were weak, and she almost knelt on the ground. Your Majesty, absolutely not. Anyone could tell how guilty the Empress was, and Emperor Jiawen was no exception. The more this was the case, the more he wanted to go. Empress, I'm just going to find Rong Zhen. What are your intentions for obstructing me in every possible way? Do you not want me to find Rong Zhen, or is there another reason? Emperor Jiawen's voice wasn't loud, but his aura was imposing. Every word was like a sharp knife that harshly stabbed into the Empress's heart. She wanted to stop Emperor Jiawen from going, but in this situation, she would seem very guilty no matter what she said. Rong Jin finally recovered his senses and went forward to support the Empress. Imperial Mother, why do you have to do this? Wasn't it just an alley? If Imperial Father wants to go, why must you stop him? There was no benefit in going against Imperial Father like this. The Empress glanced at Rong Jin weakly, and her tears fell again. What does he know? Chu Lua suddenly stood up and said in a soft voice, Your Majesty, we'll go with you. You can get a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 371. Situ Xingchen felt that Chu Luyue's words were ear-piercing. The look in her eyes changed, and the corners of her mouth curled up, but she quickly pulled it down. When Rong Jin saw the bright smile on Chu Luyue's face, he felt conflicted. Getting engaged with Situ Xingchen was his best choice now. When everything went smoothly, he secretly rejoiced. With Situ Xingqian around, everything would be much easier after that. He originally thought that he didn't care much about Chu Luyue. After all, Situ Xingqian didn't lose to Chu Luyue in any aspect. However, he only realized that this wasn't the case at this point. As for the Empress, she couldn't hear what Chu Luyue was saying. She looked pitiful, and her eyes were lifeless as she looked at Emperor Jiawen's cold and decisive back view. She felt hopeless. If it weren't for Rong Jin and Situ Xingqian supporting her, she would have long collapsed on the floor. Chu Luyue looked at the Empress in deep thought before he turned around and followed Chu Ning. When they reached the palace entrance, eunuch men had already arranged for a normal horse carriage to wait for them. Chu Luyue couldn't help but sigh. Eunuch men is indeed smart to be able to serve Emperor Jiawen for so many years. Emperor Jiawen is still wearing his dragon robe. If he goes out like this, it will definitely cause a huge commotion. Also, the Empress is in a terrible state, and she can't meet anyone. Using such a normal horse carriage can reduce the trouble to the greatest extent. The group of people then walked toward Heptagon Alley in a low-key manner. Emperor Jiawen sat in his own horse carriage, and only eunuch men followed him. The rest of the people shared a horse carriage. In the horse carriage, everyone sat facing each other, and nobody spoke. The atmosphere was tense, and the air seemed to have frozen. Finally, Rong Jin couldn't help but softly persuade her. "Mother, don't worry. Someone wants to frame us, but they might not have the ability to do so. Father has always been wise, and he'll definitely be able to distinguish right from wrong and clear your name." This someone was naturally referring to Rong Jiu. In Rong Jin's opinion, if Rong Jiu didn't interfere, this matter wouldn't have developed to this state. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at Rong Jiu, who was sitting opposite him, and hatred flashed across his eyes. Previously, because of Rong Jiu, he was grounded by his father, and had many of his rights taken away. This time, it was because of him. However, Rong Jiu leaned against the wall with his eyes closed. His expression was calm, as if he didn't care about all of this. "Rong Jiu, we have no feud with you. Aren't you afraid of retribution for framing us?" Rong Jin finally couldn't hold it in, and questioned her softly. Rong Jiu opened his eyes and looked at him expressionlessly. "Imperial brother, why do you say that? I just wanted to help father find Rong Jin. What I said in the main hall was the truth. What do you mean by framing?" Rong Jin almost exploded in anger when he saw that Rong Jin still refused to admit it. If it weren't for the fact that they were in a horse carriage, and that there were many people around, he would have long gone forward and harshly beaten Rong Jiu up. Chu Luyue sat at the side and started chatting with Chu Ning. "Father, actually, the trip to Taiyan Academy this time was quite interesting." Chu Ning was originally a little worried, but he felt much more at ease when he saw that his daughter was very calm. Hearing her talk about Taiyan Academy, he couldn't help but be curious. "Oh, really? I heard that their library is very big. What did you read?" Chu Luyue smiled and said, "Actually, I didn't read much. Actually, I didn't look at many, but I did find some that I liked." At the side, Situ Xingqian's eyelids harshly twitched. "Didn't read much?" Chu Luyue really has the cheek to say this. I clearly remember that not long after Chu Luyue went in, the records outside were already stacked up. The more hateful thing was that, according to Mentor, she even found an Earth Stage warrior technique. Even though Situ Xingqian had always been studying celestial physician, and wasn't very interested in warrior techniques, she still felt very disgusted when she saw that Chu Luyue had obtained such a treasure. Every word of hers sounded like she was purposely showing off. Situ Xingqian couldn't maintain the smile on her face, as she looked down and pretended to be quiet. The Empress gradually regained her senses. When she saw Chu Luyue and Chu Ningjing chatting happily, her heart burned with anger. All of this is clearly Chu Luyue's fault. I must have hidden Rong Jin, and colluded with Rong Jiu to frame me. Now my heart is hanging in midair, and I'm being tortured, but Chu Luyue can still smile so easily. It's all your fault. It's all your fault. Hearing the sound of the horse carriage on the limestone floor, the Empress knew that they were getting closer to Heptagon Alley, and she became increasingly anxious. Finally, she couldn't help but curse and pounce on Chu Luyue. Chu Luiyue had already seen her actions from the corner of his eyes, so he gently dodged and avoided her. Dong! A low sound was heard. The Empress's head directly hit the wall of the horse carriage. Mother! Rong Jin and Situ Xingqian didn't manage to pull the Empress back in time. When they heard the sound, it was already too late. The Empress's forehead hurt, and her vision turned black. Mother, are you okay? Rong Jin was very anxious as he hurriedly helped the Empress up. Situ Xingqian knitted her brows. Ms. Chu, even if you're unhappy with the Empress, you shouldn't do this. During this period of time, the fourth princess went missing, and the Empress was worried. How could she withstand such a collision? Upon hearing this, Rong Jin looked at Chu Luiyue with more hatred and anger. Chu Luiyue blinked. Eldest Princess Situ, your words are too interesting. Everyone saw clearly what happened just now. The Empress bumped into me on her own. If I didn't dodge, should I just sit there and wait to be hit? Situ Xingqian seemed to hesitate for a while and said, but, you're very strong, and it's easy for you to stop the Empress. In other words, Chu Luiyue did it on purpose. Chu Luiyue laughed. Eldest Princess Situ, the Crown Prince isn't weak either. Are you saying that he's useless and can't hold his mother back? Situ Xingqian was stumped. She didn't expect Chu Luiyue to be so sharp-tongued. Knock, knock, knock. Masters, we're here. Please come down. Eunuch Min knocked on the door outside. Rong Jie walked out first. Chu Luiyue and Chu Ning followed closely behind. The horse carriage stopped in a narrow alley, and Emperor Jiawen stood at the entrance of a nearby mansion. Chu Luiyue quickly scanned his surroundings and knitted his brows. This heptagon alley looked normal, but it vaguely had a very strong suppression. If one looked closely, they could sense that it came from the mansion. Emperor Jiawen looked at Chu Ning. Open the door. Chu Ning immediately said, yes, but before he could do anything, the door was already opened from the inside. The slender Rong Zhen appeared in front of the crowd. Mother, you're here. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 372. Upon seeing that the person in front of her was actually Emperor Jiawen, Rong Zhen stopped talking, and panic flashed across her eyes. Father! When Emperor Jiawen saw Rong Zhen, he first heaved a sigh of relief in his heart, before endless anger overwhelmed him. He suppressed the anger in his heart and asked in a low voice, Zhen, why are you here? Faced with Emperor Jiawen's questioning, Rong Zhen actually stuttered and didn't say anything for a while. Chu Luiyue squinted his eyes and turned to look at Rong Jin and Situ Xingqian, who had just helped the Empress down the carriage. Her Majesty, Crown Prince, isn't the fourth princess here perfectly fine? Rong Jin looked up and saw Rong Zhen standing at the door. His words were stuck in his throat, and his face turned green and white. At the side, Situ Xingqian's expression also changed. Why is Rong Zhen here? Didn't Elder Lian Ning say that he personally saw Chu Luiyue being brought to the forest outside the Imperial city by Simeng? Since Simeng died in Chu Luiyue's hands, Rong Zhen should have been hidden by her too. What's the situation now? Rong Jin instinctively looked at the Empress. Mother, this? Impossible. When the Empress saw Rong Zhen, her reaction was more intense than anyone else's. She actually broke free from Rong Jin and staggered toward Rong Zhen. Impossible. Zhen isn't here. You must be a fake. Her voice was sharp and hoarse, which made people feel very uncomfortable when they heard it. In addition, her face was distorted from shock and fear, which made her look even uglier. Emperor Jiawen didn't hide the disgust in his eyes. Empress, not only did you lie to me, but you even don't want to acknowledge your own daughter. You've really disappointed me. No matter what, he had doted on Rong Zhen for more than 10 years, so he was very sure that the person in front of him was Rong Zhen. To prove her innocence, the Empress actually lied through her teeth. How crazy! Rong Zhen seemed to be frightened by the Empress as she nervously took a step back. Mother, what do you mean? I'm Zhen. You're not Zhen, aren't you? The Empress glared at Rong Zhen. Although she was still denying it, her voice was getting softer and softer. This person was indeed Rong Zhen. A sense of despair gradually filled his heart. Tell me quickly, was it Chu Luiyue who sent you here? It must be her, right? The Empress was on the verge of breaking down. She looked like a lunatic. Emperor Jiawen's eyes were cold. Rongzhen, say it yourself. What the hell is going on? Rongzhen was stunned by the scene before her, and it took her a while to recover her senses. Aye. Yes. It was Chu Luiyue who brought me here. Emperor Jiawen continued asking, when? Rongzhen quickly glanced at the Empress and lowered her eyes guiltily. Before Chu Luiyue went to Taiyin Academy. Fourth princess, you must be joking. How come I didn't know about this? Besides, if I really wanted to imprison you, why would I choose to imprison you here of all places? Chu Luiyue scanned his surroundings. To be honest, this is my first time here. On the other hand, Her Majesty, I heard from the third prince that you come here quite frequently. What's wrong with me that I have to hide the fourth princess here? Rongzhen instantly panicked. It's you. It's you. You have a grudge against me, so. It should be the fourth princess who has a grudge against me, right? After all, to be honest, I've never been taken advantage of by you before, so why would I have a grudge against you? Chu Luiyue spoke nonchalantly. Even though his words were unpleasant, everyone present knew that it was the truth. Rongzhen previously made things difficult for Chu Luiyue at the palace banquet, but she ended up in an embarrassing state. Later on, her pearl of essence broke, and she became a good-for-nothing. However, Chu Luiyue transformed into a genius that everyone envied. He was even picked by Mu Qinghe, and had the chance to go to the Tianling dynasty. If we're talking about jealousy, Rongzhen should be the one who can't stand Chu Luiyue. Rongzhen was even more embarrassed. Rongjie lightly said, Father, now you can believe that I'm telling the truth, right? Emperor Jiawen's face was terrifyingly dark. Rongzhen, move aside. I want to see what secrets there are inside. If the Empress secretly comes here often, she can definitely find out something. Rongzhen bit her lips and hesitated for a while, but she refused to move. Father, there's nothing inside. You shouldn't come in. I said move aside, hollered Emperor Jiawen. Rongzhen was so frightened that she shuddered, and her face turned pale. Eunuch Min tried his best to persuade her. Fourth princess, please let me pass. Do you really think that you can stop His Majesty with just you? Things have already reached this stage, yet Rongzhen is still like this. Isn't she just making things difficult for herself? Rongzhen's eyes reddened as she looked at the Empress timidly. Emperor Jiawen sneered. Why are you looking at her? Are my words not as important as the Empress's? Rongjin immediately went forward and anxiously said, Father, please don't misunderstand. Rongjin didn't mean it that way. Emperor Jiawen couldn't be bothered with him, as he looked at the Empress deeply. Empress, now that things have reached this stage, are you going to follow me in or continue acting dumb here? The Empress whimpered, and her tears kept falling, looking very pitiful. However, Emperor Jiawen felt even more disgusted when he saw this. He lifted his foot and walked forward. Chu Ning immediately followed and said, This formation is special. Your Majesty, this barrier is a little special. I'm afraid it's not good to barge in. Why don't you let me break this barrier first? Emperor Jiawen stood still. Okay. Force gathered in Chu Ning's palm, and a strong suppression gradually spread out. Then he raised his hand, and a strong force suddenly flew out. Hung! The transparent barrier suffered a powerful impact, and ripples began to form. The terrifying force spread in all directions. Rongzhen, who was standing inside the barrier, was caught off guard and was affected by the force. She moved back a few steps and almost fell to the ground. She finally steadied herself and anxiously turned around, as if she was afraid of something. Just as Chu Ning was about to attack again, Rongzhen finally couldn't help but shout, Stop fighting. I'll just open the barrier. Rongzhen. When the Empress heard this, she seemed to be agitated as she immediately screamed. Rongzhen was shocked as she shrunk her shoulders. Mother, father is already here. He'll know sooner or later. As she spoke, her hand trembled as she touched the barrier. Chu Luiyue focused his gaze. There seemed to be something hidden in Rongzhen's palm. Buzz! With a buzz, the barrier suddenly opened from the middle. Emperor Jiawen walked forward first. Mother! Rongjin gasped. The crowd turned around and saw that the Empress had suddenly fainted. Chu Luiyue clicked his tongue. Isn't it a little too late to pretend to faint now? Emperor Jiawen didn't seem to care as he walked straight in. Chu Luiyue and Chu Ning followed closely behind. When they saw the scene in the courtyard clearly, even Chu Luiyue couldn't help but gasp. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 373. The courtyard was empty, and only a skeleton was hanging in the middle. From the tattered clothes, it seemed to be a young man, but his body was almost completely corroded, and one couldn't see his original appearance. The most serious injury on his entire body was his face. It was as if someone had harshly slashed his face with an axe. His face was a mess of flesh and blood, and one couldn't even distinguish his features, let alone recognize who he was. Below the corpse was a bronze cauldron. The edges of the bronze cauldron were stained with dried blood. The pungent smell of blood spread from within. It was disgusting. However, this wasn't the scariest thing. This was because there were a few skeletons on the ground around the corpse. With one look, one could tell that they were human skeletons. Unlike the hanging corpses, only white bones were left on the ground, and they looked like they had been dead for a long time. This scene caused the hearts and minds of the people who walked in to be shaken. The place fell into dead silence, and the space seemed to have frozen. After some time, Emperor Jiawen recovered his senses and suddenly hollered, "Bring the Empress over." The Emperor was enraged. Even Rong Jin, who was previously protecting the Empress, couldn't take it as he stiffly carried the Empress over. The Empress's eyes were still tightly shut, as if she had completely fainted. Emperor Jiawen stared at the skeletons, and the veins on his forehead popped out. Beat her. If the Empress still doesn't wake up, continue to beat her. The crowd was stunned. Emperor Jiawen actually ordered people to beat the Empress? He was really mad. How could Rong Jin bear to do this? He also couldn't watch others beat up his mother. He hurriedly blocked the Empress and knelt down. "Father, the truth hasn't been found yet. If you treat mother like this, you'll hurt her." Emperor Jiawen hurriedly walked forward and harshly kicked Rong Jin's shoulder. "Get lost." Rong Jin didn't dare to resist and was directly kicked to the side. Emperor Jiawen raised his hand and was about to slap the Empress. Situ Xingchen stood at the side. Even though she didn't want to be involved, she had no choice. Seeing that Emperor Jiawen had already lifted the Empress up, Situ Xingchen finally spoke. "Your Majesty, please reconsider. The Crown Prince was right. Nothing was clear yet. Why not wait until everything was clear before making a decision? At that time, if the Empress is really guilty, it won't be too late for you to punish her personally." Emperor Jiawen paused in his actions. At this moment, the Empress who had fainted suddenly woke up. She slowly opened her eyes, and was dazed when she saw Emperor Jiawen's face right in front of her. "Your Majesty." Then, she seemed to have just realized that Emperor Jiawen was grabbing her collar, and her face was filled with shock and panic. "Your Majesty, what are you doing?" Emperor Jiawen sneered and directly pushed her to the ground. "Don't you know what good things you've done? You'd better tell me clearly what's going on." The Empress knelt on the ground, weeping and complaining about her ignorance. "I don't know. I really don't know." Emperor Jiawen looked at Rongzhen. "Rongzhen, tell me." Rongzhen timidly took a step back, and her lips trembled. "Your Majesty, there's something strange about this bronze cauldron." Chu Ning walked to the bronze cauldron and carefully inspected it with a solemn expression. "This thing seems to be able to swallow a person's force." Upon hearing this, Chu Luiyue couldn't help but walk over. Once she got close, she felt a sinister aura seeping out from the bronze cauldron. The next moment, that aura enveloped her. It's dangerous." Upon seeing this, Chu Ning immediately wanted to pull Chu Luiyue away. However, Chu Luiyue shook her head and signaled for him to wait for a while. Then, she felt that the force in her body started to stir under the aura's envelopment. She looked at the bronze cauldron, black and red mixed together, and that aura suddenly became stronger. She knitted her brows. "This aura actually wants to forcefully strip my force from my body." She backed away without hesitation. After leaving the bronze cauldron, that aura quickly disappeared as if it had never appeared. However, Chu Luiyue felt a chill in his heart. Just now, She had been greatly affected just by standing at the side, let alone the person who was hanging above the bronze vat. Furthermore, that person's body was riddled with wounds and stained with blood. It was obvious that he had suffered many wounds when he was alive. When his blood dripped onto the wounds, his origin power was naturally harvested even more cleanly. Chu Luiyue was almost certain that that person's origin power had been continuously devoured and finally died from exhaustion. No, it wasn't just that person. The bones around him should be the same. Chu Ning pulled Chu Luiyue over and heaved a sigh of relief after confirming that she was fine. This bronze cauldron is an item of great evil and great een. You must not go near it. Emperor Jiawen frowned. Chu Ning, what did you say about the bronze cauldron? Chu Ning explained once more. Therefore, this bronze cauldron must have been deliberately placed here by someone to devour the power of other cultivators. As expected. After hearing this, Emperor Jiawen didn't look shocked at all. Instead, he seemed to have confirmed something. I've once heard of something similar in the royal family's secret history. As long as one gathers enough energy, this bronze cauldron can be upgraded to a higher grade yuan instrument. Whoever becomes its owner will be able to obtain all the energy it contains and greatly increase their cultivation level. Emperor Jiawen's words made everyone's hair stand on end. Such a method could be said to be extremely vicious and cruel. And the only person who knows about this, other than me, only the Empress knows about this. Emperor Jiawen's sentence was like a bolt of lightning that struck them. Everyone looked at the Empress. Chu Luiyue suddenly understood. No wonder Emperor Jiawen's attitude toward the Empress became even worse when he came in and saw the bronze cauldron. It turns out that he had already determined that the Empress did all of this back then. Si Huijing, I didn't expect you to do such a thing in secret. You're really vicious. Once Emperor Jiawen thought of how he had actually shared a bed with such a woman for so many years. He felt goosebumps all over his body. And he was so disgusted that he wanted to vomit. The Empress's face was dejected, and she couldn't say a single word of rebuttal. Rongjin also panicked and couldn't help but argue. Father, even if Mother knows about it, it can't prove that she did it. Mother is already the Empress. What benefits does she have by doing this? Yeah, Her Majesty is already the mother of the country. Why isn't she satisfied? Rongjio suddenly spoke up as he looked down at the mother-son duo, and his eyes were filled with obscurity. Of course, she didn't do this for herself. She did it for the Honorable Crown Prince, brother. You. Rongjin was shocked. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 374. Rongjio, don't spout nonsense. Rongjin instinctively wanted to retort. I'm the Crown Prince, and I'm considered one of the top cultivators. Why do I have to resort to such means? All these years, I've always relied on my own abilities to cultivate, and I've never taken any shortcuts. I've also never used such sinister means. I can swear on my life. Rongjin also swore. He was very clear that in this situation, he would be doomed if he didn't quickly extricate himself and his mother from this matter. However, his words seemed very weak in comparison to the Empress's reaction. Si Huijing, what are your intentions for doing this? Emperor Jiawen didn't listen to Rongjin at all. He had already confirmed that the Empress did all of this. The tears on the Empress's face had already dried, and only despair was left. Emperor Jiawen glanced at Rongjin and Rongjun and sneered. You don't want to say? That's good too. Rongjin and Rongjun can't escape the blame either. And Rongqi, I must have been blind back then to choose you as the Empress. I even made Rongjin the Crown Prince. Chuning, Rongjio, immediately searched the entire place. Yes. The duo didn't hesitate at all as they answered in unison. Then, they split up and started searching in different directions. Rongjun wanted to say something but didn't. It seemed like she wanted to stop them, but she just stood there anxiously in the end. Eunuch Min stood behind Emperor Jiawen, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. As it involved the Empress and the rest, this trip was very low-key, and they didn't even bring any guards. They didn't expect such a shocking secret to be exposed. Chu Luiyue looked at the messy scene in front of him, and raised his brows slightly as he looked up at the sky. Country Yao Chen's sky is finally going to change. When the Empress heard Emperor Jiawen's words, she finally realized something. Emperor Jiawen is planning to punish both her and her son. It's fine if something happens to me, but Rong Jin's position as the crown prince can't be snatched away. Seeing that Chu Ning and Rong Jiao had already started searching inside, she shivered and directly kowtowed to Emperor Jiawen to admit her guilt. Your Majesty, please forgive me. I know my mistake. You can punish me however you want, but please let my children off. They're all innocent. They didn't know anything about this. She smashed her head on the ground with all her might. With a dull thud, her forehead was soon bleeding profusely. Her makeup had long been ruined by her tears. Coupled with the bright red and sticky blood slowly flowing down from her forehead, she looked even more miserable. Emperor Jiawen was unmoved, as if he had heard a joke. You don't know? Rong Jun is right here. And you're telling me that she doesn't know anything? The queen was speechless. In actual fact, she didn't know why Rong Jun was here either. She did this very secretly, so Rong Jin and the rest didn't know about it, including Rong Jun. Even if she was crazy, she wouldn't send Rong Jun here. But Rong Jun was indeed here. There was no room for argument. Thinking of this, she suddenly felt hatred toward Rong Jun. If it weren't for her, why would Emperor Jiawen find this place? Then, he wouldn't have seen everything here. They also wouldn't suspect Rong Jin and the rest because of her existence. She looked at Rong Jun and pleaded, Jun, tell your imperial father yourself how you came to be here, okay? Take it that I'm begging you. You don't want your big brother and second brother to suffer with you, right? Huh. You can't drag them down with you. Rong Jun's eyes trembled. Many scenes suddenly appeared in her mind. How familiar was this scene? Ever since I was young, Imperial Mother would say something like this every time I met with something, right? Her eyes seemed to be covered in a layer of fog. Then, she lowered her head slightly and said clearly word by word, You're right. Imperial Father, it was Imperial Mother who sent me here. The Queen's voice suddenly stopped, and she looked at Rong Jun in disbelief. Mother said that this was the only way to help me take revenge for Chu Luiyue. Also she could pin Elder Si Meng's death on them. Every word Rong Jun said made the Queen's eyes widen. After hearing this, she was completely dazed. Soon after, the Empress suddenly realized something and screamed, You're wrong. Your Majesty, everything she said is fake. It's all fake. Don't believe her. Emperor Jiawen glanced at her and nonchalantly said, You're saying that your biological daughter is framing you? The Queen felt very aggrieved, but she didn't know what to say. She also didn't know why Rong Jun would say this. Emperor Jiawen stepped forward and asked, Rong Jun, did you just say that Si Meng died in your mother's hands? Rong Jun shuddered and lightly pointed at the bronze vat before quickly retracting her hand, as if she were afraid of something. However, this action was clear enough. She was clearly saying that Si Meng had already died in the bronze vat. I almost forgot that he's a stage 5 warrior. Taking away such a strong warrior's strength is naturally twice the result with half the effort. Chu Luiyue silently sized Rong Jun up. I only left for 10 days, so why did so many things happen in the Imperial City? If I didn't clearly remember that I killed Si Meng, I would have really believed Rong Jun's previous words. The Queen's face flushed red and white, and she was about to argue. Your Majesty, Father. Chu Ning and Rong Jiao came back one after another. The duo's expressions were strange. Emperor Jiawen's heart sank. What's the matter? Chu Ning and Rong Jiao looked at each other and seemed hesitant. After a moment, Chu Ning cupped his fists. Your Majesty, there are many skeletons buried in the backyard. Rong Jiao hurriedly added. There are more or less some scattered bones hidden in the various rooms in this yard. Roughly looking, there are about 100 people. Dead silence. Even Chu Luiyue couldn't help but frown. When she saw the bronze vat, she thought that there must be more than just a few skeletons here. However, she didn't expect there to be so many. Most of those people are cultivators. There haven't been any missing persons cases in the Imperial City all these years, so these people should have been brought in from outside the Imperial City, said Chu Ning solemnly. Emperor Jiawen took a deep breath in and stared at the Queen. Si Huijing, you can't do all of this by yourself. Tell me who's helping you. The Sea family? Hearing Emperor Jiawen mention the Sea family, the queen immediately shook her head out of reflex. No, I did all of this by myself. I was blinded for a moment. I'm willing to use my death to atone for my sins. I only beg your majesty to let Rongjin, Rongqi, and the Sea family off. Rongjin finally couldn't help but say, Mother, what are you doing? You didn't do this, right? Who's the one harming you? Just say it, Pack. The queen actually slapped Rongjin harshly. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 375. Rongjin was stunned by the slap. The Empress's slap was very harsh, and it directly caused half of Rongjin's face to swell up. Her palm was slightly numb, and her heart trembled when she saw Rongjin's dazed and hurt expression. If I wasn't forced, why would I bear to hit my most beloved son? But, you don't have the right to speak, hollered the Empress. Then she broke free from Rongjin, knelt forward and begged. Your Majesty, I won't complain no matter how you punish me. But, I'm the only one who did all this. Emperor Jiawen's eyes were filled with mockery. Didn't you deny it previously? Why are you admitting it so readily now? You just won't cry until you see the coffin, and won't turn back until you hit the wall. Seeing that all the evidence was in front of her, and that she couldn't argue, she finally admitted it. Moreover, he actually wanted to take full responsibility and put all the blame on himself. Your cultivation talent is average, so this bronze cauldron definitely wasn't prepared for you, right? How many people in this world can make you spend so much effort on it? As he spoke, Emperor Jiawen's gaze landed on Rongjin. Rongjin shuddered. He didn't know why, but he also felt guilty. He wasn't stupid. When he found out about the bronze cauldron's use, he had already noticed something. After seeing the Empress's reaction, it would be a joke if he still couldn't guess who it was prepared for. Even if he didn't know anything about it before, he still shuddered when he thought about how hundreds of cultivator skeletons were hidden in this yard. The Empress choked and couldn't say anything. Emperor Jiawen closed his eyes. Bring the Empress and Rongjin back to the palace. Without my permission, they're not allowed to leave the palace. As for Rongjin, go back to Crown Prince Mansion. Right. And Rongqi, tell him to stay in King Ping's residence. When this matter is completely investigated, I'll punish them one by one. Then, Emperor Jiawen angrily waved his sleeves and turned to leave. Eunuch Min hurriedly followed him, and didn't dare to say anything. Chu Ning heaved a sigh of relief, and patted Chu Liyue's arm. Go back and have a good rest. Now this matter had completely nothing to do with him and his daughter. However, as the commander-in-chief of the Imperial Guards, he still had to follow His Majesty to continue investigating. Chu Liyue gently nodded. Father, don't worry. Can take good care of herself. Only then was Chu Ning at ease. He turned around and walked to Rongjin. Fourth princess, please. Rongjin looked at the Empress hesitantly. Mother, scram. This consort doesn't have a daughter like you. The Empress suddenly cursed. Rongjin's already pale face turned even paler. Her lips moved. But in the end, she said nothing and turned to leave. When she passed by Chu Liyue, her head was still lowered, as if she did not notice Chu Liyue's existence. Fourth princess. Chu Liyue suddenly called out to her. Rongjin then stopped abruptly and looked up at her. Upon seeing Chu Liyue, Rongjin instinctively knitted her brows and revealed a look of disgust. However, just as she was about to speak, fear flashed across her heart for some reason. Inexplicably, she swallowed back the words in her throat. Faced with her series of subtle reactions, Chu Liyue's eyes flashed, and he vaguely had a guess in his heart. She did not say anything else, and gave Chu Ning a reassuring smile. However, Rongjin was scared and quickly left. On the other side, Rongjio stood in front of the Empress and Rongjin, quietly waiting for the two of them. He seemed to be very patient, and did not say much as he stood at the side and waited. From time to time, he even glanced at the two of them, as if he was having fun. Nobody knew that he had been waiting for this day for too long. Now that he could finally see the Empress in such a pathetic state, he naturally had to seize the opportunity. Rongjin noticed his gaze, and it was as if the fire in his heart had been ignited. Rongjiao, you did it on purpose, didn't you? You just wanted to make a joke out of us. Are you satisfied now? Rongjiao lightly said. Imperial brother, what are you talking about? I'm just waiting to send the two of you back. Father has already given the order, so I naturally have to follow it. Rongjin clenched his fists tightly. Don't think that I don't know what you're thinking. Isn't it because of your lowly birth mother? You have been harboring hatred for us for more than a day or two. One day, I'll definitely make you pay back double. Rongjiao's gaze turned cold, and intense murderous intent spread. Crown Prince, if you have the time, you should think about how to get out of this hopeless situation. The Empress's position can't be kept, and Rongjin isn't any better. This time, it will even implicate the Xi family. You can't even protect yourself, yet you still want to take revenge? What a joke. Rongjin almost shattered his molars before he finally suppressed the hatred in his heart. Mother, let's go. They had to think of another way. Rongjin supported the Empress and walked in front. Rongjiao paused and looked at Situ Xingqian. Eldest Princess Situ, are you coming along, or? Situ Xingqian's face was like a frozen mask, and it was awkward and terrible. She didn't expect things to develop to such a stage. Wasn't everything fine before? Why did the Empress and Crown Prince's situation become so precarious after I left the palace? What should I do? I won't follow you, Situ Xingqian said with difficulty. Situ Xingqian forced herself to say this, but it was too late for regrets. If I knew this would happen, I definitely wouldn't have set a marriage agreement with Rongjin. This situation can't be salvaged. This isn't very good, right? Eldest Princess Situ, you just got engaged to the Crown Prince. Now that the Crown Prince is in trouble, isn't it equivalent to running away? Not only the Crown Prince, but many people will be very disappointed, right? Chu Luiyue crossed her arms and lazily said. Situ Xingqian glanced at her, and hatred quickly flashed across her eyes. Chu Luiyue is clearly doing this on purpose. I'd better not. After all, this matter is very serious. Even though I'm engaged to the Crown Prince, I'm still considered an outsider. As country Xing Luo's eldest princess, it's really not appropriate for me to continue being involved in this matter. At this point, Situ Xingqian was still very particular with her words, as she easily separated herself from this matter. It was as if she had forgotten that it was because she testified that she once saw Chu Luiyue and Rong Zhen together, that she incited the Empress and Rongjin to criticize Chu Luiyue in front of Emperor Jiawen. Chu Luiyue smiled and nodded. Eldest Princess Situ, you're right. However, I originally thought that you and the Crown Prince must be in love with each other, since you got engaged so quickly. When you saw that he was in trouble, you would definitely step forward. It seems like I'm thinking too much. Situ Xingqian's expression became even more awkward. Rongjin, who was walking in front, suddenly reacted as he turned around and rushed to Situ Xingqian, grabbing her hand. Yes, Xingqian, you're the only one who can help me now. Go and ask your father to step forward. He'll definitely let you off. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 376. Situ Xingqian flung Rongjin's hand away without hesitation. Rongjin was shocked. Xingqian, wasn't she smiling at me with gentle eyes previously? Why did she suddenly become so cold in the blink of an eye? He even saw a flash of disgust in her eyes. Situ Xingqian hid her smile and gently said, Prince, don't misunderstand. Your Highness, please don't misunderstand. It's not that I don't want to help. It's just that this matter is of great importance. His Majesty might not be willing to let others know about it. If I rashly ask for father's help, it might make His Majesty even angrier. Upon hearing this, Rongjin also hesitated. Situ Xingqian's words made sense. Now, Imperial father seemed to have determined that this matter was done by Imperial mother. In the future, it was very likely that they would be held accountable, and even the Xi family might not be spared. This isn't just a family scandal. If this news gets out, the entire country, Yao Chen's royal family's reputation will be destroyed completely. But other than this, he really couldn't think of any other solution. Then, what should we do? Rong Jin had never seen Emperor Jiawen so angry. Xingqian, you must think of a way to help me. We're already engaged now. If anything happens to me and mother. Situ Xingqian's intestines were about to turn green with regret. If I knew that things would turn out like this, I wouldn't have replied to Rong Jin's letter no matter what. She pretended to think for a while and said, Prince, don't worry. This matter hasn't been settled yet. This matter had not been settled yet, so there was still room for negotiation. Why don't I go back to Xing Luo first and discuss with father before we see how to solve this? I must leave this troublesome place as soon as possible. Once I go back, I'll immediately tell father to cancel my engagement with Rong Jin. Rong Jin didn't know what Situ Xingqian was thinking, and only thought that she agreed to ask her father for help. Hence, he was very grateful, and even the unhappiness and suspicion he felt when she flung his hand away disappeared completely. Okay. Then you must be quick. I'll wait for your news, said Rong Jin, and his expression changed slightly. Xingqian, only you're willing to help me. Situ Xingqian suppressed the disgust in her heart and smiled as she urged him. Rest assured, Your Highness. Her Majesty the Empress is still waiting for you over there. Hurry up and go. What happened today must have had a great impact on her. You must take good care of her. Warmth flooded Rong Jin's heart as he looked at Situ Xingqian gratefully. He had never felt that she was so moving before. He couldn't suppress the impulse in his heart, and suddenly pulled Situ Xingqian into his embrace. Situ Xingqian was shocked by his actions, and almost wanted to hit him. Xingqian, I promise you, once this is over, we'll get married. Rong Jin enunciated every word clearly. Situ Xingqian's body froze. If it weren't for the people watching at the side, she would have long pushed Rong Jin away. She closed her eyes and suppressed her anger. Your Highness, now is not the time to talk about this. Let's deal with the Empress first. Upon hearing this, Rong Jin finally let go of her and looked at her intently. Then, everything depends on you. Then Rong Jin turned around and left. Situ Xingqian felt as if ants were crawling all over her body, and she almost screamed out loud. After waiting for those people's figures to disappear with much difficulty, she hurriedly said to Rong Jiao, Third Prince, I'm sorry. I don't want to disturb His Majesty anymore, so I'll take my leave. After saying that, he walked out. Rong Jiao raised his voice. Eldest Princess Situ, isn't this a bit too rude? Why don't I send someone to send you back? Situ Xingqian acted as if she didn't hear anything as she hurriedly left. Very quickly, only Chu Luyue and Rong Jiao were left in the yard. Chu Luyue bowed to Rong Jiao. Thank you, Your Highness. If it weren't for Rong Jiao's interference, Chu Ning definitely wouldn't have been able to avoid punishment, and the heptagon wouldn't have appeared. However, Rong Jiao looked at Chu Luyue in deep thought. You don't have to thank me. We just have our own needs. Then he lifted his feet and left. Chu Luyue raised his brows. Previously, I didn't realize that Rong Jiao is quite interesting. At the very least, he's honest enough. But judging from his previous reaction, he didn't seem to know what was going on here. Her eyes sparkled. Previously, I didn't hide Rong Jin here. But she appeared here for no reason these 2 days, and was coincidentally seen by Rong Jiao. The most important thing is that Rong Jin's memory is in a mess. She clearly doesn't remember everything that happened in the forest outside the Imperial city, and remembers that the Empress sent her here. Also Si Meng. He clearly died in front of me, but I've completely remembered it wrong. If it weren't for Rong Jin's words, Emperor Jiawen definitely wouldn't have confirmed the Empress's guilt so easily. In the entire Imperial city, there should only be one person who can do this. Rong Xiao. Chu Luyue lightly pouted. Yesterday, I stayed at Rong Xiao's place for quite a long time, but Rong Xiao didn't even mention this matter. Who would have thought that all of this was controlled by Rong Xiao, who never showed himself, from the start to the end? Even Rong Jin sighed when she recalled the series of developments. Rong Xiao's schemes are really deeper than I thought. However, this feeling of having someone to deal with the aftermath and devising strategies to solve all problems seems pretty good. Chu Luyue's lips curved up, and she turned around to look at the bronze cauldron as she fell into deep thought. What exactly does the Empress want to do with this thing? Does she really just want to help Rong Jin raise his cultivation level? But even if Rong Jin relies on himself to cultivate, there shouldn't be much of a problem. If more than 100 people died here, it means that the Empress has been doing this since a long time ago. What exactly is she doing? Suddenly, a thought flashed across Chu Liuyue's mind. Previously, Rong Jin mentioned a secret about Rong Jin. Could it be related to that? Xi family. In the martial arts arena, the Xi family's younger generation was diligently cultivating. Xi stood below the arena and gave them pointers from time to time. One of the biggest reasons why the Xi family could become the leader of the four big families was that the Xi family had plenty of fresh blood. These young men and women in their teens and 20s were all very outstanding. Compared to the other families, the Xi family was especially outstanding in this aspect. Even though they couldn't compare to Xi Ting, Xi was already very satisfied. Suddenly, a guard rushed in from outside with a hurried expression. "Family head, His Majesty is urgently summoning you." Xi was dazed. Why would His Majesty suddenly summon me to the palace at this time? Do you know what's going on? The guard shook his head, but his expression was a little nervous. Eunuch Min is waiting outside. He seems to be quite anxious. Xi knitted his brows. Seeing the guard's reaction, it doesn't seem to be as simple as anxious. He said in a low voice, "Got it. I'll go now." Digression. I slept at 3 p.m., was disturbed by a mosquito for more than an hour in the morning, and my period came to visit. I broke my phone. Please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 377. Xi walked out, and happened to see Xi Ting return. "Greetings, master." Xi Ting cupped his fists and bowed. His chiseled face was a little tense. Xi saw his expression, and found it strange. "Xi Ting, shouldn't you be at the academy today? Why are you back now?" Xi Ting hesitated for a moment. "I heard that something happened in the palace." "What happened? Why didn't I know?" Xi was even more confused. He had been sending people to contact the palace. If something really happened, he should be the first to know. How did Xi Ting know that he was at Tianlu Academy? Also, it doesn't look good. Xi Ting looked at him and clenched his fists. Chu Liyue didn't go to the academy today. He was summoned to the palace. So what? Xi realized something the moment he spoke, and his expression changed. "You're saying that it has something to do with the fourth princess?" Xi Ting nodded. "I felt that something was amiss, so I came back to take a look. I saw Eunuch Min standing at the door." Xi Ting pursed his lips. Eunuch Min's expression wasn't good, at least. He had never seen such an expression on Eunuch Min's face after meeting him so many times. Also, this was clearly directed at the Xi family. Xi's heart gradually sank. Since the fourth princess was involved, His Majesty must have found out that they were secretly searching for Rong Jin. Xi Meng might have been exposed as well. He hurriedly patted Xi Ting's shoulder. "I'll go to the palace to take a look first. You stay at home. If anything happens, you'll be in charge of everything in the Xi family." As he spoke, he took out a token and stuffed it into Xi Ting's hands. Xi Ting frowned. What had happened to make the patriarch so nervous? He even gave me the token that represents the Xi family's master? "Master, I can't take this." "You should. Take it." Xi's expression was very stern, and he didn't allow any rejection. Xi Ting exchanged glances with him, and suddenly realized that the current situation might be more troublesome and dangerous than he had imagined. He finally held the token tightly and nodded. "Don't worry. I'll protect the Xi family." Only then did Xi feel more at ease. He took a long look at Xi Ting before turning to leave. Xi Ting looked at his back. For some reason, the uneasiness in his heart started to spread. On the other side, Xi followed Eunuch Min into the palace in a hurry. Along the way, he had tried several times to find out what was going on, but Eunuch Min was very tight-lipped and refused to divulge any information. This made Xi even more certain of his guess. Something must have happened to the Empress. Otherwise, Eunuch Min would not have such an attitude. The two of them were silent the entire way. By the time they reached the Imperial study, countless thoughts had already flashed through Xi's mind. Siyi looked around without batting an eyelid. He immediately realized that the guards in the Imperial study were much stricter than before. The overall atmosphere was also more solemn and dignified than before. His heart felt like it was hanging in the air, and he felt extremely uncomfortable. Eunuch Min stepped forward alone and said respectfully, "Your Majesty, Master Si has arrived." Emperor Jiawen's cold voice came from the Imperial study. "Let him in." Eunuch Min looked at Siyi and took a step back. "Master Si, this way please." Siyi took a deep breath in and tidied his clothes before walking forward and pushing the door open to enter. Once he walked in and saw the scene inside, Siyi's heart harshly skipped a beat. In the spacious and quiet Imperial study, Emperor Jiawen was sitting behind the table. The booklets, brushes, and ink on the table were all swept to the floor, and it was a mess. The Empress Si Huijing was kneeling in front of him. Her extravagant palace gown was filled with dirt, and her usually neatly combed hair was also very messy. Her face was tear-stained, and her eyes were red and swollen. She knelt there, and her entire body was filled with despair and pain. Siyi had never seen her in such a pathetic state. "Her Majesty?" He couldn't help but shout as he hurriedly walked forward. But very quickly, he realized that Emperor Jiawen was still in the study. He hurriedly stopped in his tracks, turned around, and looked at Emperor Jiawen. He suppressed the waves in his heart and bowed. "Siyi greets your Majesty." When the Empress saw him, her dazed eyes moved, and her expression was very strange. It was as if she wanted to cry, but she couldn't cry anymore. She had cried for half her life, and she had almost cried dry today. However, this didn't make Emperor Jiawen's heart soften at all. Emperor Jiawen looked at Siyi with a heavy gaze. "Siyi, do you know why I called you over?" Siyi only felt a strong pressure coming over him. He knelt down almost without thinking. "I don't know. Please enlighten me, Your Majesty." "You don't know? Don't you know that the Si family was secretly searching for Rongzhen's whereabouts?" Emperor Jiawen's voice was like a heavy hammer that harshly slammed down. Siyi clenched his fists tightly. As expected, His Majesty already knows. He immediately placed his hands on the floor and heavily knocked his forehead on the floor. "I know my mistake. Please punish me, Your Majesty." "You know your mistake? To think that I thought you were loyal to me. I didn't expect you to secretly work with the Empress and lie to me for so many years. You already knew about Si Meng's matter, right? Si, you're really something." The more Emperor Jiawen spoke, the angrier he got. He actually picked up the remaining teacup beside him and suddenly threw it at Siyi. Bang! The teacup harshly landed in front of Siyi. The shards flew everywhere, and two of them quickly scratched Siyi's face, leaving bloody marks. However, Siyi didn't dare to move as he knelt even more respectfully. "Your Majesty, I know my mistake, but all of this has nothing to do with Her Majesty. Back then, I was worried that Her Majesty couldn't protect herself in the palace, so I specially arranged for Si Meng. Also, regarding the fourth princess's disappearance, Her Majesty was afraid that you'd be too worried, so she wanted me to help. She didn't hide it on purpose. No matter what, I'm willing to bear all the consequences." Upon hearing this, Emperor Jiawen sneered. "Bear all the consequences? Do you have the right? Siyi, you don't have to act in front of me. Rongzhen didn't even go missing. She was hidden by the Empress." Siyi was shocked and suddenly looked up. "What?" Upon seeing his reaction, Emperor Jiawen squinted his eyes. "What? Your good sister didn't tell you?" Siyi's heart was in a mess, and he subconsciously looked at the Empress. "Empress, what's going on?" The Empress lowered her head. She knew that it was useless to say anything now. Rongzhen happened to appear at Heptagon Alley at that time, and she even said those words herself. Emperor Jiawen had already confirmed everything. She spoke in a hoarse voice. "Your Majesty, my brother really knows nothing about this. Please let the Si family off." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 378. Siyi was confused as he listened at the side. Rongzhen didn't go missing. She was hidden by the Empress? But she didn't look like that at all. Besides, if she really wanted to do this, Why would Si Ming die for no reason? He endured the pain and couldn't be bothered to wipe the blood off his face as he hurriedly begged. Your Majesty, even though I don't know who told you all this, it must be fake. Previously, the fourth princess and Si Ming went missing together, and Si Ming died very quickly. The Empress was worried about the fourth princess's safety, so she found me. I secretly sent people to search the entire Imperial city, but they didn't find any traces of the fourth princess. Rongjun said all this herself. Could she be lying? Emperor Jiawen's cold words made Si Yi swallow his remaining words. He widened his eyes in shock and couldn't recover his senses for a long time. Rongjun said it herself? Could it be that Rongjun has been found? Looking at Si Ye's expression, Emperor Jiawen thought to himself, he really doesn't seem to know about this. Otherwise, his acting skills are too good. Si Yi had followed him for many years, so he more or less understood him. If Si Yi was really involved in this matter, he definitely wouldn't have such a reaction. Emperor Jiawen's mood finally calmed down a little. As the head of the Si family, the head of the four major families, Si Yi's identity was very important. Unless it was a critical moment, Emperor Jiawen wasn't willing to touch him. If not, the entire imperial city would be shaken. That was also the reason why he chose to deal with such a major matter in such a low-key manner. Si Yi, the Empress has already admitted that she killed Si Ming and sent Rongjun to Heptagon Alley to frame the Chu family. Do you have anything to say about this? Si Yi was dazed. The Empress killed Si Ming? How is this possible? All these years, the Empress trusted and relied on Si Ming a lot. What good does it do to kill him? Besides, why did she send Rongjun to Heptagon Alley? Hasn't that place been abandoned for many years? Faced with Emperor Jiawen's stern questioning, Si Ye's heart thumped, and he couldn't help but look at the Empress at the side. Empress, is what His Majesty said true? The Empress's face didn't change at all. She just nodded stiffly. She only hoped that the Si family wouldn't be implicated. So even if she wasn't the one who did it, she had to admit it. Moreover, with the bronze cauldron in Heptagon Alley, these matters were nothing. I'm afraid that Emperor Jiawen has already cut me into pieces in his heart. Si Yi was shocked. He asked almost subconsciously why. The Empress lowered her eyes, seemingly not intending to continue speaking. Emperor Jiawen chided her. Why aren't you saying anything? If you can do it, why can't you say it now? Tell Si Yiji what good things you did in Heptagon Alley. Si Yi had never seen Emperor Jiawen so angry before, and he couldn't help but be shocked. Previously, when Si Ming and Rongjun were mentioned, Emperor Jiawen had been holding it in. Why did he suddenly have such a huge reaction when Heptagon Alley was mentioned? It seems like the Heptagon Alley incident is more intolerable to Emperor Jiawen than Si Ming's existence and hiding Rongjun. The Empress's pale and cracked lips trembled. Your Majesty, I did all these myself, and it has nothing to do with my brother or the entire Si family. If this matter continues, it will only become more troublesome. Please give me a swift end and end it. Emperor Jiawen chuckled. Now you know how troublesome it is? When you did it back then, did you think that this day would come? It's not impossible for you to end it. You just have to make it clear whether the bronze cauldron was prepared for Rongjun or not. And why are you doing this? Si Yi was confused when he heard this. What bronze cauldron? Why is Rongjun involved in this? The Empress bit her lips tightly. Actually, Emperor Jiawen had asked her this question many times. However, she never admitted it. She knew better than anyone else how much Emperor Jiawen hated the bronze cauldron. Hence, once I admit it, Rongjun will never be able to make a comeback. Thinking of this, her heart was completely drowned in despair. The next moment, she suddenly slammed against the wall at the side. Emperor Jiawen stood up angrily. Stop her. Si Yi had long rushed over when the Empress moved and blocked in front of her. The Empress harshly slammed her head into Si Yi's arms. Dong! Si Yi let out a muffled groan as a sweet and fishy taste surged into his mouth. The Empress actually really wants to kill me. She used all her strength this time. Jinger, what are you doing? Si Yi was angry and anxious as he directly shouted the Empress's name. The Empress grabbed his hand and anxiously begged. Brother, kill me. Quickly kill me. As long as she died, everything would be over. But how could Yi bear to do it? What exactly happened to you? Emperor Jiawen looked on coldly at the side. Empress, do you think I can't do anything to you if you don't say anything? Then he suddenly raised his voice and shouted, Guards, bring me a brush and ink. He had smashed most of the things on the table, and they couldn't be used anymore. However, the Imperial study didn't lack these things at all. Eunuch Min hurriedly came in from outside, as if he didn't see the disheveled Yi and the Empress on the ground. He silently walked to the other side, took out a new brush, and presented it to Emperor Jiawen. Then, he very consciously started to grind the ink. Emperor Jiawen picked up the brush and nonchalantly glanced at the Empress. I think you can't continue to be the Empress. As for Rongjin, with a mother like you, what kind of son can he teach? He can't take on such a big responsibility. I should have removed him long ago. The Empress suddenly realized that Emperor Jiawen didn't just want to remove the Empress. He also wanted to remove the Crown Prince. In her panic, she couldn't help but scream. Your Majesty, you mustn't. Rongjin just got engaged with Situ Xingchen. If you remove the Crown Prince now, how are you going to explain to country Xing Luo? Emperor Jiawen paused in his actions and sneered. I see. No wonder they're so fearless. They actually thought of how to get away with it right from the start. It turns out that Rongjin successfully fought for the marriage agreement with Situ Xingchen, just for this day. Emperor Jiawen hated himself for being blind for so many years. He actually let such a vicious mother and son lie to him for so long. Okay, I do want to see if country Xing Luo will continue to maintain the marriage agreement between Situ Xingchen and Rongjin after knowing about this. Country Xing Luo. Situ Xingchen returned to the palace at the fastest speed possible and recounted everything that had happened in detail. However, country Xing Luo's Emperor Xiankong, Situ Yan, kept quiet for a long time before shaking his head. Xingchen, this marriage agreement can't be cancelled. Digression. I forgot how to address the Emperor of country Xing Luo in his name. Using this chapter as the basis, I'll change the previous chapters together. It was hard to believe that in the early summer when mosquitoes appeared, I used 4 heating pads in one day. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience from love. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.